Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 905 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. It's today we're seeing that Ukraine took out that really important bridge that Russia really needed in the Kursk Oblast. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as we have gotten incredibly huge news of a major Ukrainian victory in the area, as the Ukrainian airstrike was able to hit and destroy the Glushkovo bridge today, the only major bridge crossing within the area of the Seym in the southern direction, meaning that all Russian forces in this area are cut off from heavier reinforcements, any kind of viable path of retreat, and are now relegated to one pontoon bridge that is just about a mile and a half away from the Glushkovo bridge crossing, and a very minor bridge near to the area of Zivano that apparently has a very low tonnage allowance, meaning that no Russian forces and any larger numbers will be able to retreat across that bridge in a very orderly fashion. And not only that, that bridge, according to information that we have at the moment, is also being shelled and is heavily damaged at this point, and may have been rendered unusable, although not completely destroyed. A major development within the Kursk region, and a huge victory for Ukraine, as it largely ensures that 700 Russians are trapped within the area south of Seym, and not only that, it also ensures that the Ukrainians will have pretty much unmitigated access and control of this area south of the river until a long time way off in the future, probably months from now. Moving on from that giant piece of news, we also got to hear that the Belarusians are incredibly scared today, as they have made an announcement saying that they believe that an attack from Ukraine, a ground invasion into southern Belarus, may be coming around the corner anytime soon, which is a very bizarre statement to make, but nevertheless one of the bigger ones we've heard the Belarusians make recently. At the exact same time, a massive drone attack occurred on Kerch, and we have heard that a railway ferry may have been hit again. The only operational railway ferry that was left may have been hit in this attack. A large amount of fires did start inside the city, and we also heard that they declared a state of emergency within the city of Kerch, once again showing that things did not go well there as of today. We also got to see that a grain-carrying vessel near Odessa was stricken by some sort of a missile today as well, and not only that, we also got a lot more news out of the Kursk region that wasn't just focused around Glushkovo. We were able to hear of more Russian prisoners being captured. We did get to see the Ukrainians manage capturing another Russian main battle tank in the area around Giri, and we also got to see some very interesting footage that has not been seen so far of the very opening hours of the invasion and what it looked like around the Sudzha border checkpoint, or the Sudzha border checkpoint, depending on how people pronounce it. And we also got even more news, a little bit of a follow-up in the area around Irkutsk, showing the debris and wreckage from the Tu-22M3 that crashed there last night. And we also got a little bit of frontline updates as well around the area of Pokrovsk and Chasiv Yar today as well, in video and picture evidence. But nevertheless, we have tons and tons of video and picture evidence today, and it is a load of it. We've hardly even covered any of the really nitty-gritty pieces of news, really just the main headlines, but we have loads of them tonight. And moving us right into the biggest development today, it is the destruction of the Glushkovo bridge. The Glushkovo bridge is the only one in this area that can support a larger tonnage of equipment and personnel traveling up and down the area and into the southern area of the Kursk Oblast, called the Glushkovo district. We are able to see the bridge right here on satellite view. It is a two-lane bridge, but from what we understand, it is the only bridge in this area that was built to a higher tonnage tolerance, meaning that larger, heavier vehicles could cross this bridge where they cannot elsewhere. This bridge has been hit several times by the Ukrainians since the beginning of this offensive, and on this channel, we've talked heavily about the importance of this bridge for the Russian defenses south of Glushkovo and south of the Seym, and we've also talked about how the Ukrainians would be very wise to knock out this bridge, because they will largely be stopping any real kind of Russian actions in the future south of Seym, and the Ukrainians will be able to get pretty much complete control of this area and set up their new defensive positions along the banks of the river, a very formidable defensive position, and one that would be very tough for the Russians to try and cross in the future in any kind of a possible counterattack. We were able to see a picture that came out today of the bridge crossing having been destroyed, and I'll be showing y'all that right here. We can see earlier on in the day there was some vehicle on the bridge that was on fire. We're not exactly sure what kind of vehicle that was. And we can once again see the 4 pop marks, or really the holes in the top of the bridge cover, by the HIMARS missiles that impacted this bridge over the past few days. We then got another picture showing that the bridge, sometime in between that last picture and this one, had been hit by a very large munition, and it was able to completely disconnect some of the bridge spans and send them straight into the wreckage below. We then finally...
I think the hole got larger in the bridge. I think the hole expanded. I think it got worse.
Dude, I think the infrastructure is crumbling. Like, I don't know.
Mr. President, the second hole has hit the bridge.
Mr. President, a JDAM hit the bridge. And no joke, it looks like some kind of an airdropped bomb hit the bridge and ended up knocking it out. So here's that footage showing y'all. And let me mute the rock music. I forgot about that. That was in the short war summary today. But we can see the 4 holes in the bridge. We can see the guide rails on the side of the bridge that had been knocked off from an earlier explosion. And in a second, right up here, right there was the impact from the air-guided bomb. Hits the bridge, spans come apart immediately.
Was that like a storm shadow or something?
I have absolutely no clue, Matthew. You were asking me something I wouldn't even know. We don't really know what that was, but it seemed to have a large amount of explosive filler inside of it, probably several hundred pounds, because the explosion was strong enough, it literally uprooted the spans from their supports and then threw them into the river. So it was an incredibly strong explosion.
That was a very big one indeed. To take out the entire span like that, that was a humongous munition.
Man, humongous. I mean, this thing was massive,
Mr.
right?
Humongous.
Mr. Humongous. But beyond that, an absolutely amazing hit. And it has massive, far-reaching consequences for the Russians that you can't even really begin to compute, because a lot of people are going to go, okay, it was a bridge, woohoo, what a big deal, you know, it's not that big of a thing to knock out a bridge. Y'all wouldn't believe it. This is probably one of the biggest things that has happened in the Kursk offensive so far, outside of the capture of Korenivo, and I'm going to explain why this is such a big deal. So let me go all the way up and down the river and explain what we see from beginning to end really quickly, because there are a couple of other bridges beyond the Glushkovo bridge, but they're not that important, and some people have been misleading some folks on how important these bridges are. This bridge does cross the river. It is completely unimportant. Like this one, we've completely written off. The roads that it has access to do not lead deeper into Russia in any way, shape, or form. They just lead straight to Markovo, and that's it. There are, of course, dirt paths through the fields that you could use, but this will never be a viable route for reinforcements to flood across, or for the Russian army to move any kind of larger vehicles across. The bridge has a very low weight clearance, and for this reason, this bridge has absolutely no strategic value whatsoever for the Russian Federation or for the Ukrainians. We've seen that this one also hasn't been hit as well, and it seems that it's been completely ignored by both sides. Moving on down from that area and further down and towards the town of Zivano, we also got to see another bridge here. This one is a little bit more significant than the bridge I just showed you all a minute ago, but still, it does not have the tonnage requirements necessary to move larger amounts of Russian equipment and vehicles through the area. And so for this reason, this bridge is not that vital of a target. However, we do have confirmation that Ukrainian HIMARS strikes have been hitting this bridge, and apparently there is some damage to it, but we don't have any video or picture evidence to corroborate that. We just have Ukrainian military statements to go off of, and largely we're taking those at face value at the moment. So this bridge may be structurally compromised at this moment. It may no longer be usable as a major corridor, and so this one's kind of on the way out, but not all the way out. The bridge at Glushkovo was the only one in the area that was rated for high tonnages, meaning that a main battle tank or several main battle tanks could cross this bridge at a time, and the bridge wouldn't end up collapsing under the weight or buckling from it. It could also allow for larger transports, such as Euro 4320s or a semi-truck, something along that size, fully laden to be able to cross the bridge back and forth. It was also approved for that as well. This is the only major bridge on the wreckage in this area of the Glushkovo district, and this is why it is such an important bridge. If the Ukrainians knocked the bridge out, and now talking in the past tense, now that the Ukrainians have knocked the bridge out, this is going to have a very big effect on the Russian forces that are currently south of Glushkovo. From what we know, there is one battalion tactical group sized element. that is south of the wreckage Seym right now in this entire area in between Tetkino and Glushkovo. There is only one battalion tactical group, but from what we can understand, this unit most likely has some lighter APCs, maybe some armored cars, but mostly probably lighter vehicles like Buhankas and Ladas as a large amount of their transport. Nevertheless, this is a 700-man force that just lost their only corridor for resupply and reinforcements later on in the battle. That means that this light force, this light battalion tactical group that is in this area, is facing down several Ukrainian battalions that are advancing from the area of Snagost here in the east, which I'm going to click on Snagost right here. This is Snagost, and the Ukrainians are advancing westwards from there, and these Russian forces have no means to resupply themselves after they start to run low on ammo, and not only that, there's no way to reinforce them either and try and build up the forces in this area because the major bridge that would have allowed for something like that to happen no longer exists. It's been completely destroyed. And so for this reason, the Russian commander in this area that's in charge of this battalion tactical group is most likely already considering a path of retreat or a way out of this area of the Kursk Oblast before they get completely encircled and are forced to surrender. The Russians only have, from what we can tell, one actual option to conduct a viable retreat at this moment, and this is the small pontoon bridge that was set up about a mile or so away from the Glushkovo bridge. You can see the Glushkovo bridge right over here with the red X over it, and right over here where this yellow dotted circle is, this is a small pontoon bridge that was created by the Russians at some point around the 7th day of the invasion, from what we can tell. This little pontoon bridge is not really rated for heavy equipment crossings. From what we understand, this is a lighter tonnage pontoon bridge, or some kind of a lighter tonnage bridge that was set up by the Russians in this area, most likely as a possible backup if the Glushkovo was destroyed. But from what we would understand, this once again will not allow for larger vehicles like supply trucks to be able to cross. It's most likely going to be lighter vehicles than a supply truck. Most likely, like I was saying, Buhankas and Ladas, that this battalion tactical group that is south of the wreckage Seym has in its ranks at the moment. This means that the Ukrainians are looking at a really good situation. The Russians aren't. The only option they have is to use the pontoon bridge that is right here, well, it is right here in the satellite picture, as a corridor out, a path of retreat. The Ukrainians may end up destroying the pontoon bridge. From what we hear, it is certainly within artillery range, and the Ukrainians could start to hammer the pontoon bridge and knock that out as well, or destroy any Russian forces attempting to knock out the bridge crossing in this area, from what we know. But at the moment, we haven't seen any Russian movement crossing the bridge yet, or we haven't heard about any at least. That does not mean, though, that the Russians are not going to use this. They certainly will have to, because they really don't have any other options at this point beyond retreat. Otherwise, these lightly equipped, lightly armed forces that are south of Glushkovo are going to get encircled, and then they're going to end up having to surrender, meaning that the Russians lose about an entire battalion's worth of manpower again due to Ukrainian offensive, and also, not only that, the Ukrainians would still secure the area south of the wreckage Seym. So largely, the Russians are looking at a lose-lose in this area, and that's why the knocking out of the Glushkovo bridge is such a major thing. I cannot really state enough how big of a deal this is, because this area here around Glushkovo, if I was to give y'all a rough estimate of its size, and I'm going to try and quickly do that here as best I can, so let me see if I can get this knocked out really quick on air, because if I connect all the dots, no joke, it actually will give me the exact size of ground that the Ukrainians will capture, at least a good approximate. And so this area is about 231 square miles of additional ground that the Ukrainians would end up taking control of. Now, to give you all a better idea of this, so that way we can convert it over, square miles to square kilometers. And let me go see if I can get this really quickly. So, 231. So this would be an additional 600 square kilometers of ground that the Ukrainians would end up controlling if they're able to capture this entire area. And not only that, they probably will be able to knock out a whole other Russian battalion in this area and force them to surrender. Many of y'all are going to start getting the idea here that this is actually a really big thing. 600 square kilometers is 60% of the size of the ground that the Ukrainians have been able to capture since day one of the offensive. And they've largely guaranteed by knocking out the Glushkovo bridge that this 600 square kilometers of additional ground south of Seym will be theirs as well. The Russian battalion down here really has no other option than to retreat at this moment, or to die standing, or to end up surrendering, which dying or surrendering is a very unsavory option for the Russians at this moment, considering that they're trying to just keep manpower in the area. They're not wanting to lose an entire other battalion that they have to end up replacing later, so they're most likely going to end up retreating or surrendering. Either one is a win for the Ukrainians because they get this massive amount of ground, this additional 600 square kilometers of land. And not only that, it's on probably one of the most well-defended positions in the entire area. It's along the Seym. And the Seym, while not being that big of a river, and I'll show y'all where at Glushkovo its widest is. So at its widest, right here where this bridge crossed, the widest that the river gets is about 343 feet, or about 100 meters. So approximately the length of a football field is about how wide this river is. So it's not really a massive river. It's kind of just a medium or a smaller sized river, not that big. And especially in some of its more narrow places, like over here, just around Glushkovo, for example, it gets down to about 134 feet, or about 40 meters. In this area, the river is not that big. I mean, it's a fairly small river. And also, I saw Speak No Evil say, that's a big one. Not here for Alabama, because here in Alabama, our rivers are massive, and usually that's what Matthew and me work off of, is how big are the rivers locally, and ours can end up getting to a 1/4 mile and a 1/2 mile wide very easily. In fact, where we grew up in our hometown, I believe the river there was getting kind of close to about a 1/5 of a mile or a 1/4 of a mile. So this one is
Something
fairly,
like that.
yeah, something like that. It was a fairly big river compared to this. This is what we would call more of a creek here in Alabama, funnily enough. But in Europe, or most of Europe, this would be classified as a river. So for Europeans, this is actually pretty big. For Americans like us here in Alabama, this isn't really the biggest river. But beyond that, it doesn't matter the size of the river, it matters the motion of the ocean. And from what we can tell, this would be an amazing kind of a defensive position for the Ukrainians, because crossing a river that is even 40 meters wide at its narrowest around Glushkovo would be a massive obstacle for either side. It's very hard to get engineering units into an area like this, much less to push the other side off of the bank of the river, so that way there's enough operational room to set up a crossing, and then to start crossing over and create a beachhead, or if you want to call it that, on the other side of the river. That is next to impossible. We have very rarely seen that succeed for either side. The only time we saw that succeed was during the Battle of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, and I can actually show you all the exact curvature of the river that this happened in. It happened about right here, somewhere up here on the Severodonetsk River. And I think Maddie will remember this when I'm talking about it. The Russians set up a pontoon bridge in this area, and an entire 2 battalions attempted crossing it, and the Ukrainians dropped so many shells on those crossing Russians, they ended up wiping out all 2 battalions in about 2 days.
I do remember that. It was a massacre for the Russians, indeed.
Yeah, it was a complete massacre. And eventually, the crossing by that little bridgehead did end up succeeding. Now, don't get me wrong, it did. But the Russians ended up losing about 2,000 men, about 2/3 of a whole brigade, trying to cross that one bridgehead. So as y'all can tell, this is something that is going to pose a big obstacle for the Russians in the future, because now the Ukrainians have a secured and strong western flank for their entire offensive. There will be no way for the Russians to drive reinforcements across the Seym at this point and try and get to the area near to Sudzha, and then just try and march along the border and cut the Ukrainians off from further resupply and access to Ukraine. They will not be able to do that anymore, at least in the western flank, because the Seym will prove to be one of the most arduous and difficult defensive obstacles that the Russians will try and deal with if they ever even get in a position at this point to counterattack in the future. So this is a huge deal, and the Ukrainians are already seizing the opportunity that they have with the destruction of the bridge, as we did get reports today that the Ukrainian forces are starting to advance towards Glushkovo, and from what we were told, they had already advanced advanced from Snegorsk to Vishnevka within an hour and a half after the news came out that the bridge had collapsed after the explosion from the airstrike. And we can see right here that Vishnevka is in control of Ukrainian forces, according to the information. It was about 1.25 miles away from Snegorsk, so it does show that the Ukrainians are able to move about 1 mile an hour, meaning that they will be close to Glushkovo very soon, probably within the next day, as long as they don't meet any kind of larger resistance from Russian forces in this area, which we're expecting they will not, because most of those Russian forces are probably being given an order to retreat further north of the wreckage from the pontoon bridge, so that way they can live or be in the Russian army to fight another day for the large part. But this is absolutely huge. It is one of the biggest things that we've seen so far. I cannot overstate that enough. And it is probably one of the biggest, most major victories that the Ukrainians have been able to achieve so far in the Kursk offensive, beyond the initial breakthrough at Sudzha, and also the Battle of Korenivo, which has largely ended up with Ukraine being in control of the town of Korenivo. But moving on from that little bit of news, right? Well, that giant news that we had near
massive piece of news.
Yeah, I mean, huge piece of news. That almost blew my eardrums out right there, but a huge piece of news right there. It is time for us to move on down into something that is very interesting. And while it's not today, in terms of recency, it is something that is very interesting to see. We actually are starting to finally get footage released from the Ukrainian armed forces showing their original crossing from the border checkpoint near Sudzha. We were able to see that today. We actually got 2 new clips published to us, and I'm going to be showing y'all the openings of the Sudzha offensive now that we're getting a much clearer picture of what it really looked like. And so here's the clip. When you see that this was put out by the 80th Brigade, so once again showing that the 80th Brigade is involved in the offensive so far, we can see that this video begins after the heavy shelling occurred at the checkpoint on the border. We can also see a Ukrainian tank at point-blank range bombarding the buildings inside the checkpoint. We can see the Ukrainian tank down there still maneuvering. We can see a drone flying over and observing for any signs of life down there from the Russians. And we can see the Russians coming out actually waving white flags, giving up immediately. Once again,
they were so ready to give up too. They knew this was a losing battle for them, and they were like, we just need to give up as soon as possible. And also, this is footage from the beginning days of the invasion, right?
Yes, this is from literally hour 1 of the offensive into Sudzha.
Yeah, it's crazy. These guys gave up so quick. They didn't even put up a fight whatsoever, basically.
No, they really didn't. I mean, they got bombarded very heavily by artillery and practically gave up instantly. And we now see what appears to be Ukrainians processing some of the prisoners. Actually, it's Russians transporting some of their own wounded from the checkpoint and dropping them off in front of the Ukrainians. And we see a mass of body armor strewn about from all of the Russians that had surrendered earlier in the day that were ordered to strip of their protective gear, their helmets, body armor, and such things. And we can now see the mass of Russian prisoners just from the checkpoint alone crossing the border. This was the first batch of prisoners that Ukraine took at the very opening of the offensive, and it appeared to have been already numbering in the dozens. We can then see the Ukrainian MBT continuing to move around. We can see that it has the triangular offensive emblem of the Kursk theater. And then it appears that the clip ended right there, once again showing some of the very opening actions of this offensive. And then we also got to see another clip from the surrounding areas of the checkpoint on how the 225th Battalion cleared an area around the checkpoint to advance into. Because, of course, they didn't all just drive straight through the checkpoint. Most of them just ended up crossing the borders around the checkpoint, so that way there were some flanking maneuvers happening, and everyone wasn't going into just a head-on assault with no flanks at all. So we can see this little MTLB moving up. It's actually a UR-77 Meteorite, and it's about to fire off its mine-clearing charge. There goes the mine-clearing charge. And they're actually using this thing as a mine clearer, which is fairly rare. Usually they just use them as an anti-infantry weapon. We can see the explosive charge blowing up on the minefield in front of them, clearing a small path while that weird glitching thing pops up in the top corner of the screen. But you see the explosion right there, and that explosion from the meteorite cleared a very small path, about a vehicle width, through the minefield that the 225th Battalion then exploited and broke through, making its way on inside of Russia, probably near the Oleshnia area, and then on to Gogolevka, Rubanshchina, and then Sudzha itself. once again giving us a little bit of a better look on what that area of the offensive looks like within the opening of the battle, the opening of the theater in the campaign for the large part. And from what we can tell, it was actually pretty rapid. The Ukrainians largely did what I would call a shock and awe campaign. They ended up barraging the Russians at the checkpoint heavily, which was really the only meaningful resistance in this area to start with. They also conducted flanking attacks simultaneously to break through the border in several different areas, and the Russians, being overwhelmed at this checkpoint, immediately surrendered because of the shock and awe kind of an attack that the Ukrainians conducted. From that point forward, the Ukrainians really met no defense, at least in the short term, as they advanced from the checkpoint into the town itself, and it appears that that kind of an offensive effort was an absolute success by every single measurable instance we can take, because of course 1,000 square kilometers of ground already captured says a lot for the successes of that opening hour of the offensive. But moving on from that and into Sudzha, we did get to see that apparently some Ukrainian soldiers are very good. They are incredibly good at what they do. In fact, I would say some of them are a good goose. And we got to see that one Ukrainian Special Forces soldier actually stood in front of the good goose today and took a picture in front of it inside of Sudzha.
Is that the Aflac duck in the logo, by the way?
Yes, like that is the.
It looks like
duck.
it.
Man, I would have to tell you, man, all ducks look very similar, but this is the dang it, man, my headset just died. 1 second, man. Apparently it didn't pick up audio for a bit, but this is the Dobry goose, which is the good goose. So I gotta say, what a place, and also I wonder if we could find the good goose here in Sudzha. I wonder if we can. So let me see if I can type it in. Good goose. Not we don't want to see the location. Let me just type this in. Oh, dang it, it brings us all the way to LA. Dang it, man. Like that's ridiculous. I hate that.
The Good Goose Cafe. That sounds like it could be a good place to try.
Man, it's a Thai restaurant apparently in Los Angeles, but we sadly can't find the one in Sudzha. Wait, hang on. Maybe we can. If we looked around really quickly, because it's got to show up as like a restaurant or something like that. And so, I'm not seeing it, sadly. I think we'll have to look for that some other time. But still, it does confirm that the Ukrainians are inside of Sudzha. Once again, like I can't get enough confirmation for this because there's always people doubting that they're there. But still, very nice to see the Special Forces soldier in front of the Good Goose Cafe. And, of course, I hope he's enjoying a nice good goose. And so with that, we're now moving on from that, and we're now moving on a little bit further north, where we got to see that some of the neighbors apparently got a little sip of the gray goose and started stealing stuff from their neighbors' houses. And one Ukrainian soldier caught him in the act. Check it out.
Слава Україні!
We're going to be muting that because we got the choral music in the background that's probably copyrighted, and we can see that these.
Dang, she made off with a ton of stuff too. She like looted the whole house.
Man, she went in there and she said, "Welcome to house cleaning, and today we're cleaning the house." It just took everything. I mean, it's
That's crazy. Just resort to stealing right off the bat once things go sideways, and then get caught by the enemy. The enemy comes into your territory and says, "Hey, stop stealing your own stuff." Like, it's crazy.
She created soldiers like, "Are you stealing your neighbor's stuff?" And they're like, "Yes." And he's like, "Huh? What do you know? That's kind of bizarre."
This Ukrainian didn't even sign up to be like the theft police. He was here to like take over the territory to try to trade it for land, but now he's trying to do like basically police work.
Yeah, he's like, "What the hell are y'all doing?" I mean, you see them just packing stuff into their pockets, getting ready to go again after this guy leaves. But that's Russia. Like, that's crazily enough how Russia is. Once again, I can't really say that much about it because many of y'all will know that there has been instances of looting like that here in America in pretty tough times. Like, for example, in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, it was known that looting was fairly common for a good while in New Orleans. But still, it is pretty wild to see that it's only been like 10 days since the offensive started. And not only that, it's not like it's a destitute land out here anymore around Sudzha. I mean, the area is fairly calm behind the lines. There's not really a lot of barrages or bombardments that the Russians are even doing a lot behind the lines at this moment. It's fairly infrequent. And yet these people will still take the opportunity to go and loot their next door neighbor's house and bring all of their stuff back to theirs. I mean, that's pretty crazy because it's like, what if the Russians actually do push the Ukrainians out really soon? And and those people return back to their house, and all their stuff is gone, and it's literally just a door over from them in their neighbor's house that they knew before they left. Like, how in the world is that going to work for these people? Are they going to be like, can I get my stuff back? And this person's just going to be like, no, finders keepers. That's probably how it would legitimately be, man. It's going to be chaos if the Russians ever take this place back. There's going to be more fighting after the Russians retake this place, if they ever do, than there was before the Russians took the place back, in all honesty.
I have a feeling they were already robbing each other before this actually happened in the invasion. I have a feeling they were probably stealing each other's stuff already because, you know, Russia's a pretty, interesting place when it comes to, like, relations with neighbors. They're not exactly friendly with each other, from what I can tell. So it was probably already bad terms. So they just took advantage of the situation.
Man, I'm guessing so, man. But still, that is absolutely crazy to see that they're robbing each other blind out there. Like, and there's no reason to yet. Like, there's none, like yet or ever, really. I mean, there's no real reason for them to be doing this, and yet they are. I mean, that's crazy, really, to be entirely honest with y'all. But anyways, moving on from that, and down near the area of Glushkovo, we did get to see some wreckage of a Ka-52, confirming that one of them was shot down. There's the little pile of wreckage right there, and we can see that it was geolocated. I put this down on the map as close as I could to the actual crash site, considering that I can't get the actual Earth view on this map. I had to kind of get it as close as possible. But if y'all want to see where this really was, it was down here. And let me see. It was down here, and it was around right here somewhere, I believe. Up here, or it was incredibly close to the border. It was somewhere about right here. And let me see if I can actually look at that picture again. Hang on, folks. Maybe I can look at it again. All right. So there was a little bend in the trees. Look at that boiler. So where in the world is that bend in the trees? Because it was down here.
That's like playing GeoGuessr to the extreme. You're looking for the bend in the trees. It's gonna be a tough one.
The bend in the trees. I'm sure I can find it. Like if I pay attention enough. Oh, wait a minute. Wrong. Hang on. We got this, folks. We got this. So there's a field. You know what? I'm going to cheat, because I did this earlier and cheated, so... Well, I be, folks. It was further north. It was literally right up here, but that's where the Ka-52 crashed, exactly on the map, just in case y'all are wondering where it was. And we also got this really weird picture of a building ascending to the heavens as proof that this is this exact location.
And it was like the building of the heavens or something like that. The way it was like floating up there. All it was missing was a halo.
Man, that's the building right there, man. When you walk by, you just hear, "You raise me up." It's like, what the hell? It's like, where's it going? Like, dude, I wonder how in the world you pay rent when that thing goes flying. Like, do you pay by the hour, or like is it like an airfare kind of a thing? But anyways, moving on from that, and moving on from the Sudzha area, or the Sudzha area, we did also get to see today some Ukrainian troops passing through the border checkpoint as they made their way on into Kursk. And so here's the clip. We're going to be muting the Chad music, if I can find the mute button. There we go. And we can see the MRAP making its way on through.
The dragon's teeth are not very strategically placed to stop any vehicles coming through.
The dragon's teeth are teethy. And we can see them driving on by. Kind of casual.
For some reason, this reminds me of the UK a little bit, like with the grass or something. I'm not sure what about it does, but it kind of does.
Oh, look! It's Birmingham. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. This would actually be let's see, what would it be? This would either be Bournemouth or Blackpool, one or the other. But but anyways, I'm just kidding for all of our British viewers. I just want y'all to know that.
Just joking.
Because someone's about to get offended and go, "How dare you?" And then it's a joke, it's a prank. But we see them driving on through. Ukrainians taking pictures, just kind of relaxing as they make it on through the checkpoint. They're finally making their way all the way through, passing the weigh scale, and that's the end of the clip. But still, really cool to see that, of course, they have clear control of the checkpoint. We can't confirm this stuff enough, but, of course, really neat footage. Moving on from that and up into the area around Kromsky Bliki, we did get to see that more Russian prisoners were taken in this area today. And here's the clip.
Да нахуй ваши. Ваши, сука, блядь, съебалась Ахмат, нахуй, пидорасы, нахуй.
This is what happens when you get taken prisoner. The devil gets you.
I would like to say thank you for selling your souls. Stuff like that. And that's the end of that clip, but a couple of more Russian prisoners were taken. So far, to give you all a little bit of an update on the Korenivo-Kromsky-Byky direction, we haven't gotten a lot of video and picture evidence today so far of what's going on in these two directions, and so we are assuming that this area may actually be a little bit more active, and for that reason, operational security is once again being instilled inside of the ranks, and so we're not getting a lot of video and picture evidence in these areas showing us what's going on. So we're assuming that there's probably some heavy fighting at the moment, and that's why we're not getting a lot of video and picture evidence. So hopefully we will get some tomorrow, because if that is the case, and we are correct with that assertion, we will probably get a lot more video and picture evidence of what happened today, but it will come out tomorrow, and we'll be able to cover it then. But moving on out of the area of Kromsky-Byky and Korenivo, and moving on over towards the area of Lyubomovka, we also got to see in this area that another Russian prisoner of war was taken. Just kind of quietly walking them through the woods. And moving on from that clip and on into our next one in this area, we also got to see a Turkish armored personnel carrier involved in the offensive. I got to tell you this, you better watch out using a Turkish armored personnel carrier, because considering how the country of Turkey does Turkey things, this armored personnel carrier could do something Turkish as well. It could just one day go, I hate Israel, and then you'll be like, what? Wait a minute, what? You know, whoa, you know, and then it just like takes off like an airplane and goes flying towards Israel. You never know. Like, this thing could do something absolutely bizarre. But all jokes aside, it is really cool to see this nice, beautiful looking MRAP out there on the battlefield, of course being used by the Ukrainians. We don't know what specific brigade, but still pretty nice to see, and hopefully it's doing pretty well out there. We haven't seen one of these we haven't seen one of them knocked out yet, so we're assuming it's doing fairly well, but you got to watch out with these things, because considering that it's a Turkish MRAP, it could do Turkish things, and you just never know what Turkey's going to do, because Turkey does Turkey things. And so with that,
one day it might deflect bullets, one day it might let the bullets go right through. You never know. It's just that Turkey type thing. Also, it likes to hit fences, too. It likes to ride fences.
man, one day you could be driving this thing along, and it could be your best friend. The next day you get in, and freaking Ismail Hania is the driver. You just never know. Like, it's like, it's like, what the hell's going on here? But anyways, moving on from that and down into the area of Nizhny Makovo, we did get to see that the Ukrainians were able to capture another Russian tank today. This one not as impressive as the others. This is a T-72BA, meaning that it's really just a T-72A. A T-72A is one of the first iterations of the T-72 main battle tank that was ever put into service way back in the 70s, and they are not really that good in the modern day. Back when they were originally introduced, they actually were not that bad, but nowadays these things are hardly passing as decent. They're pretty rough off, not that great, but I do have to say, look at that M9. That guy's got a Beretta M9 on his hip.
That's clean.
Yeah, that's pretty clean, actually. I like that. But still, another captured tank, once again showing the Russians are abandoning their armor, but also, we don't know whose armor this is, because usually we've seen T-80 BVMs and T-90Ms in this area, and we have seen a couple of T-72s, but we have not seen a T-72A, so we don't know whose tank this is. This could be the 810th Naval Infantry's Brigade's armor, or their attached armor unit that they have with them. It could be the Border Guard's T-72. We really don't know what unit this T-72 was attached to, but it looks as though it was in really, really bad shape. So we're assuming that it's probably one of the new brigades that's moving into the area, because usually the tanks are fairly high-end from what we're seeing in this area for what Russia can muster these days. But moving on from that, that is offensive, if you want to call it that. And what's really wild about that, I don't know what it is tonight. For some reason, I felt like this was a really, really quick segment. This lasted like 40 minutes. Like, it's actually normal for its length and like the amount of detail that we can get into with this. But so far, the Ukrainians are doing fairly well. Probably here within the next week, they're going to end up controlling about 1,700 square kilometers of ground inside of the Kursk Oblast. Not only that, we are going to see that the Ukrainians are continuing to reinforce their units in the area. We're already hearing that a new brigade is being brought in, the 95th, from what I've been told, and it seems as though things are going to continue to go quite well. So we are going to be waiting and seeing if things keep on rolling like that. But with that, we are now going to be moving on up into another interesting bit of news, and this one we've actually asked y'all about a little bit, and I want to make sure that y'all continue to talk about this, at least for a little bit, because we are starting to hear of something that Russia is doing that may be some form of a false flag, or some form of a way to try and blame Ukraine with something very major. We're getting news that the Russians are starting to spread rumors about the Ukrainians and how they may end up conducting some sort of a dirty bomb attack using Russian nuclear fuel storage sites around the Russian Federation. This is according to information that we got today from Live UA Map, but they were getting this from a Russian telegram, which was putting out statements that the armed forces of Ukraine may be preparing to conduct some sort of a false flag attack, well, not a false flag attack, but some sort of an act of terror against the Russian Federation, and that they were going to try and respond to that in the future if it was to happen. But still, a lot of people have been talking about this, and a lot of people have been talking about the generally broad statement, not just on that supposed false flag that would happen, but still, a lot of people are talking about the Russians just possibly creating a false flag to escalate the war even farther, and to justify that escalation as best as they physically can. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts and ideas on this assertion, or at least this idea that the Russians could do something like this. And a lot of people believe that the Russians may end up conducting some kind of a really serious false flag to justify a further escalation in this conflict, and possibly be able to pull out weapons of mass destruction that have not been used in the war so far. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well? Do you think that's possible, or not really?
All right, so now that we're hearing that Russia is preparing a major false flag provocation, at least according to Russian telegram channels, to escalate the war, what are your thoughts? 61% said Russia is probably going to do so, while 14% said Russia is not going to do that, and about 11% or so said only if things get worse inside of Russia. And honestly, on this one right here, I'd have to say that they probably are thinking about doing a false flag provocation. Like I've said before, the incident at the Zaporizhzhia plant could arguably have been a false flag sort of in motion, but they kind of backed out and got cold feet, and it really didn't go anywhere beyond the simple fire at the plant. So it's definitely possible that they could do another one and potentially maybe do a dirty bomb scenario and then say we need to escalate the war and call a mobilization to try to respond to it. That's a possibility indeed. So I'm actually with the 61%. I think it's pretty likely, sadly, because Russia is getting desperate and they're being embarrassed quite badly in the Kursk region, and I think they are going to go to the extremes. I'm not saying they're going to use a nuke, but they could go maybe do a full mobilization or something like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I believe that a false flag is possible by the Russians, but I don't really know if they would use that to escalate further to the usage of weapons of mass destruction or anything along those lines, because even if they tried to make something appear as though the Ukrainians ended up conducting some form of nuclear terror on the Russians as a hypothetical, I'm very uncertain whether they would be able to justify the use of nuclear weapons on Ukraine itself as a country. Maybe on the Ukrainians inside of Russia, but even then I feel like that's a bit of a stretch, at least to me. Maybe they would use it as a further justification for a full mobilization inside of Russia, although that wouldn't really do that much in reality at this point. But we never really know. I still feel like it is likely that they'll conduct a false flag, but to what end would the escalation come of that false flag? I'm not entirely sure at the moment. But I feel like it probably still would not be nuclear, because it seems as though the Russians will probably never cross the nuclear threshold, although I wouldn't say that with certainty and then work off of that, because then they may, and then that would be a pretty bad scenario to deal with overall, because I don't really think anyone wants to get nuked. But still, with that...
You know, Enforcer, I think a possible option here, everybody likes to resort back to the nuclear threat, and that still is a threat that's on the table, but in my opinion, I think that is pretty unlikely. One more likely thing that Russia could do is try to basically start striking the Ukrainian government buildings inside of Kyiv, which so far I think they've sort of held back from really doing that on a really large scale, but they could go in there and try to hit basically where Zelenskyy is, and they probably wouldn't be able to get them because there are bunkers underneath those buildings, but they could try to come into Kyiv and basically level the place if there was a false flag provocation. That's probably the more likely option in my opinion.
That could be a really likely option. It could be entirely possible. That actually, I would say, is probably what they would be going for, at least right now. Or maybe they would be trying to decapitate the Ukrainian government and take out top officials as some form of retaliation for this false flag attack. Maybe that would be it as well. But with that, I hope we address that fairly well, at least in our opinions. And, you know, our opinions are our opinions. You can agree to disagree with them. But moving on from that, we did also get to hear that while the ongoing Ukrainian invasion into the area of Sudzha is still going on, the Belarusians seem to be getting a little bit weary or scared as well. And it's actually really interesting to hear because they're saying, and I want to make sure that I read this correctly. The Minister of Defense of Belarus, Krenin, which I've never heard a name like that in my life, said that there was a high probability of armed provocations by Ukraine against Belarus. And this is a guy here who said it. He looks scared already.
He looks very scared. Could this be maybe the response that we're looking at here? A false flag and then Belarus invades Ukraine? That could be another option as well, because why is Belarus getting suddenly so hostile toward Ukraine, considering there's been no moves toward their territory? And all of a sudden they've been threatening nukes. Now they're threatening a high probability of armed provocations by Ukraine. It seems like Lukashenko is getting a little bit unhinged right as the invasion of Russia started. So it seems like maybe that could be an option as well.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe they're trying to use the Belarusians as some form of a distraction, but I gotta say that the high probability of armed provocations by Ukraine is highly unlikely. The Ukrainians are using a lot of their combat power currently inside of the southern region of Ukraine and also within Kursk. It doesn't really make a lot of sense that they would then open up a third front into Belarus and then give Belarus a justification to actually join the war as a belligerent, because the Ukrainians would honestly, at that point, even in my opinion, be taking on far more than they could chew. And I feel like they wouldn't really want to just pull in an additional 70,000 armed forces into the war, because while that's not really a lot, when we're talking about the Ukrainians having about 900 to 950,000 active service members right now versus Russia's 1.2 million, an additional 70,000 doesn't sound like much, but when you're talking about an additional 25,000 combat troops possibly getting involved in a brand new front where there aren't really any Ukrainian forces, that would be a pretty goofy move by Ukraine. So I have a feeling that once again, the Belarusians are saying things just as hype talk or just to try and get people riled up and scared. I'm not really sure which it is, but still pretty bizarre statements to be made at the moment by the Belarusians. It's an endless stream of them. From yesterday, from Lukashenko saying that if an invasion of Belarus happened, they nuke everyone instantly on the spot, to then begging for a peace resolution to be made, and now the Minister of Defense is coming out saying that the Ukrainians are going to invade Belarus. Belarus is just doing really bizarre stuff lately and saying some incredibly bizarre stuff, because I would say that it's highly unlikely that a Ukrainian invasion of Belarus would actually happen. But with that, I hope that also...
You said a Ukrainian invasion of Belarus is likely to happen, you say?
Unlikely to happen.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I was like, there's no way Ukraine goes into Belarus. Like, I'm positive that's not going to happen.
No, that would never happen. Like, that would be pretty crazy if they did. I mean, absolutely 100% kooky, crazy. I would say it would be bizarre, even insane. Maybe I would say that whoever would come up with that idea, they would be playing with fire, because while the Belarusians aren't really like a big scary military or anything, y'all do have to remember that no one really wants to add additional combat power into the war and a whole other country officially into the war. So why would Ukrainian commander approve a plan like that? It just wouldn't really make that much sense. But anyways, moving on from Belarus, and now moving on deep into Russia, to the area of Irkutsk. We got to see something fairly interesting today. The wreckage from the Tu-22 that crashed last night. So here is the clip.
Eternal flight, brothers.
Apparently a navigator actually died in the crash. Like, he didn't get to eject or anything, so he actually went down with a jet. Eternal flight, comrade.
Oh, it's the Kamas.
And they got this thing out there, the trailer with the chessboard on the side of it. That helps.
It's the finish line.
You were so close, Bliet. It was right there. But anyways,
They're always just so close, but they just don't quite make it.
They just never do. And you also have all of these guys out here dressed like they're from the movie 1984 and like the blue jumpers. Like I like that, man. They're out there going, I see they raised the coffee ration today, double plus good, or something like that. Like they're all standing out in the field saying crap like that. And then this big semi passed. right there, but that's the end of the clip. But really, really good to confirm the Tu-22 was lost. We had to make sure to confirm it, folks, because some people are always out there saying we just never do enough to confirm stuff, and I'm out here today. I'm on that grind, folks. I am confirming anything and everything we have. But moving on from that, out there in Irkutsk and back towards Ukraine itself, because we actually have some pretty interesting news coming out of Ukraine. We also have to make sure to take a quick moment to address a couple of questions that have come in so far tonight. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Oh, it's that time of the night already. For some reason, the stream has flown tonight. I don't even know how, because I'm over here somewhat mildly ill still, but I'm actually doing okay tonight. I can't believe it, so thank the Lord. But anyways, jumping into our first Super Chat segment right here, we have a $50 donation from Purple Gerbil, who's a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that support as always. And I don't see a comment to address, but of course, we appreciate that very much. It keeps the lights on, the channel running, and Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you so much for the massive support, Purple Gerbil, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to keep this channel running, help it to be possible, and I gotta thank gerbils that are purple, much like yourself, for always being behind this channel and always supporting it and helping it to keep on running. Y'all don't always throw in comments, but the support means a great deal, and we always love to know that there are purple gerbils out there in the world who enjoy this channel and want to see it running. And so with that, thank you massively once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to Toons Nod, who puts in a 50 as well. And huge shout out to you, Toons, for that support. And also, let me know if I'm saying your name correctly, because I have a feeling I'm butchering it. But he said, I've been supporting since day 40, and it's been a bit quiet, he said, while immigrating to Ireland. And my question is there any risk to Ukraine from Volodymyr, or have the AFU secured their flanks between the attack vectors?
And that is a good question, Thune's not. And also, it's perfectly fine to be a little bit quiet. I hope you're having a fun time in Ireland. Ireland is a fun place. It's really cool, actually. There's so many cool cities, like Dingle, and others, like Sligo, which sounds like some sort of like a curse word or something like that. I think you also have really cool, incredibly cool cities like Galway, which everyone always has fun things to say about Galway. But anyways,
you know what? We're in the U.S. We're scared of the IRS. Like the IRS is a terrible thing for most people. They can't stand it. But in Ireland, they're scared of the IRA, which is a little bit different, and they don't collect taxes.
They collect
Kneecaps.
Yeah, they collect kneecaps and hubcaps. But beyond that, I drove my Saracen through your garden last night. But anyways, beyond that, I gotta say, I hope you're having a fun time in Ireland. All jokes aside, and thank you so much for the support. Now, as far as your question goes about Volokhansk, let's go to Volokhansk and let's take a look at it from the map. And so let's go here. So. Volokhansk. I would say probably not. From what I would understand at the moment, the Ukrainians are probably starting to encircle Volokhansk at this moment, because we do know that the Ukrainians are in the area of Suwakanovo, Bobrik right here, and also near Safanoga as well. So it seems as though near the Kromsky-Biki area, they're starting to fan outwards east and west in both directions. And so going off of that, I would think that the Russians probably would not be in Volokhansk, or they would probably be focused on a defensive effort at this moment, considering that they're probably getting surrounded on 3 sides. So I would generally have to say probably not. They probably don't have to worry about that much of a counteroffensive in this area. And not only that, we also have to remember that Russian reinforcements are still moving in at the moment. They're not here in incredibly large numbers. We do know that the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade may be the only brigade at the moment that's at full strength in the area and is actually fighting a defensive battle. But I just don't really think there's any others in this area that would be building up enough to be able to conduct a counterattack like that in this direction yet. Not only that, they haven't really stopped the Ukrainian momentum at Koronivo and Kromsky-Biki anyways, so they would have to bring the Ukrainians to a stop in these areas and then conduct a counteroffensive, because you can't conduct a counteroffensive while the enemy forces are continuing to advance, because you haven't been able to stabilize the front line enough to be able to get a clear idea of the situation and the enemy forces' weak points, and then prepare a proper counterattack at that moment. So I would generally say They're probably not in a great threat of a counterattack from this area at the moment, but that would be my assessment. And once again, our assessment is working off of the information we have at hand. It may not be the most up-to-date or the most accurate. Sometimes the information comes in about a day after it really was supposed to come out, due to operational security reasons and all that from all kinds of folks. So I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you so much once again for the support. Also, I saw someone, Matthew, say something that Russia Today reported something. It's like, if you're taking them as a credit for news, yikes, that's pretty rough. You may as well be using CNN or Fox at that point for your news and taking them at face value. But but with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least. And thank you so much once again, Toons Nod, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I was able to answer that question incredibly well. And also, I see a lot of people saying, oh, the IRA, it doesn't even exist anymore. That's true. Matthew was just making a joke, and it was kind of like a comedy thing, so it was supposed to be a joke and funny. But yes, the IRA is...
The IRA doesn't exist anymore? They're gone? Like, I knew they were, like, shrunk down from what they were, but I didn't know they were, like, totally gone.
They don't really exist anymore as, like, an actual group. Like, the IRA technically does exist, but it's like in a wildly small group. I mean, they're assuming that it's maybe like 12 or 8 guys at this point. It's no like real group like it used to be back in the day. The IRA largely ceased to exist by the very early 2000s, around 2002 to 2006. And so nowadays it's pretty much non-existent. But at a time they did exist. One thing that a lot of people may not know about the IRA, and this is something that's wildly interesting, is that the IRA was actually funded and supported by Gaddafi in Libya, by a good portion. Like, I don't know if people actually know that, but they were able to get a large amount of Syntex B, I believe is what it was called, which was a yellow-looking kind of a plastic-like explosive. And they would use it everywhere on everything. But it was specifically made inside of Libya, and then the Libyans, under the orders of Gaddafi, would send a lot of the weapons and bombs that the IRA would use to Ireland and smuggle them in. And that's how the IRA ended up being armed and dangerous really throughout the entirety of the Troubles. But they also were funded and equipped by others. Like, we also understand the IRA is one of the few groups outside of Russia that actually has access to a small amount of AN-94s, which are these rifles right here. They're really ugly and they're wildly expensive, but apparently a couple of these were given to the IRA by the Russians as some kind of a gift of some sort.
The Russians did them dirty. It's like giving somebody a gift they really don't want, and they're like smiling fakely, like, "Oh yes, thank you so much, I appreciate this." And really, it's like garbage, and you know it. But you're trying to like, "Hey, thank you so much." I'm not gonna lie, this gun right here looks like pure trash. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
It was pretty garbage. That's why the Russians never introduced it into full-on service. But much like every other Russian project ever, Matthew, the Russians said, "Well, yes, this is best rifle ever. We will introduce it into every single part of the Russian army in the next 8 years," and it never happened. Like, they never put this thing in because it was so expensive to produce them. But also, I see a lot of people saying, actually, the IRA used mostly American weapons. Kind of true, kind of true. Mostly, one of the most common ones, actually, to talk a little bit about the IRA's weaponry was the AR-180, or what was called the AR-18, if you wanted to, you know, shorten it. I always remembered it as the AR-180. But let me see here. And that's not a good enough picture. Let me go find y'all a better one. So this one is made by Howa, which I believe is a Japanese company that produced this one. But this is the AR-18. The AR-18 failed in the domestic market here in America. It also failed at getting any real large military contracts. And so Armalite was desperate to try and find anyone who would buy these things. And so some of the few people that would buy them were proxy groups that were buying them for the IRA. And so the IRA ended up buying a load of these things, these AR-180s, and a lot of them ended up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. But let me see here if I can get y'all I think this is really the actual best picture we can get of the AR-180. It's a really, really small picture, but it uses the exact same kind of 30-round mag that an AR-15 would use. It largely is somewhat similar to an AR-15, except for instead of it being made out of milled parts, it's made entirely out of stamped parts, and it also uses a short-stroke gas piston instead of direct impingement. And the short-stroke gas piston will actually go on to be used in a decent amount of rifles. The SVD, the Dragunov, as a lot of people call it, was actually one of the best examples of a short-stroke gas piston kind of a rifle in service. And also some other modern rifles are also short-stroke gas piston as well. But still, kind of an interesting side note about the whole AR-180 thing is that they did end up getting used a decent bit by the IRA. And let me see if they actually have that down here. Operational use. Yeah, here we go. Still others found their way into the hands of paramilitary groups, such as the Provisional Irish Republican Army in Northern Ireland. And so...
Oh, I didn't know that's what it stood for. That's the first time I've ever heard that. What in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting group.
That's scary.
Look at their... I'm not going to lie, man. This has a little bit of Libyan in like symbology to this thing, just a little bit.
I'm just saying that the bird looks like it's in distress. It looks like it's been dropped into a hot, like, boiling pot of water or something and it's screaming. It's like this. Is this supposed to be inspiring or something like that? And also, like, the writing, like, I know this is Irish, but it's kind of interesting. It kind of has, like, a little bit of a Arabic kind of, like, look to it or something.
It kind of does a little bit. And let's see here. I'm trying to see if I can find... Oh, yeah, look, here we go. Here we go. The allies of the IRA, there it is, Libya. And also Palestine, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Gee, folks, like terrorists like other terrorists. What do you know? Like, that's actually crazy. Like, I actually did not know that the Palestinians were kind of big with the IRA. I did not know that. That's actually news to me. But let's see. And then, of course, the opponents of the IRA was the UK, considering that they were literally going to war with the UK. The British Army and the Royal Ulster Constabulary, which was kind of like the best way to explain it was like a paramilitary police force that existed in Northern Ireland. They actually ended up doing most of the fighting, from what I understand. And also, like, they're actually very interestingly enough, and I'm seeing some people saying, oh, you know, like the Troubles is still a touchy subject. It is, with good reason. It was literally a war of terror for the large part, and that's something that a lot of people never think about because they always think about wars of terror happening in the Middle East, per se, and then some of those attacks will then reach out into the Western world. For 30 straight years, one of the largest wars of terror was fought in Northern Ireland. And that's kind of like one of the craziest things to think about is that all the way from the 70s up until the very early 2000s, there was an ongoing war in the UK and Northern Ireland, just all the time. It was an endless deal. But beyond that, there's a load of interesting stuff to talk about with the Troubles. Like, for example, with the Troubles was one of the first times they actually started to use helicopter transports to supply remote checkpoints inside of what would be called dangerous or hostile territory or the bad country anytime in modern warfare. Of course, in Vietnam, helicopters were used a good bit, but in Northern Ireland, helicopters started to be used a very big amount because the IRA would ambush British convoys traveling down the roads in between checkpoint to checkpoint, you know, resupplying and dropping off new reinforcements. And so then they started to bring everything in by helicopter instead to all of these remote checkpoints throughout Northern Ireland. It was one of the few times in history at that point that such kind of helicopter operations like that were going on. So kind of an interesting ordeal. Also, the equipment that the British used in the Troubles was very interesting as well, along with the IRA equipment that was used. Talking about it on like the most neutral perspective that I can, it was a very interesting conflict with the kind of weaponry that was used on both sides, and also the kind of strategies and tactics that ended up being created. But still, I think we can all generally say, because of course we're pro-American and pro-Western on the channel, if your group is affiliated with the Palestinian Liberation Front or the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which is funded and supported by Iran, an enemy of the United States, I think it largely puts the IRA into an anti-Western group. I don't think we have to put that much of an argument into that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Still kind of like a bit of an interesting thing, but I hope that you're enjoying your time in Ireland, because beyond that whole rabbit hole, the IRA is pretty much long gone. Ireland and Northern Ireland are fairly safe places these days. Still, there is a decent amount of tensions in between the Ulsters and the Irish. That's still a thing, but at least it's not hostile and violent anymore like it used to be during the Troubles. So fairly nice to see that, at least. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting right back into the rest of our news inside of Ukraine.
All right, so the last one of the segment is going to go to GunFox61, who's a longtime channel legend, by the way, and they put in a $30 donation. Thank you very much, GunFox, for that support. He said, on this day in history, siege of Fort Detroit ended in British victory in the War of 1812, and in 1896, gold was found in Alaska, and 1989 solar flares hit and caused chaos in stocks. And question from the chat. And also, he said, February 24th, 1943, BB-61 USS Iowa starts sea trials.
And I like this day in history thing that you're doing, GunFox61. I think it's really cool. Like, I actually like that a lot. And yes, that is true. And something that a lot of people also don't know is that Detroit, the town, started off as a small fort. And let me see if they still have the fort somewhere around, like as a historical site. I think it's gone. Let me see. Fort Detroit. So let me see if I can find it. So this would have been Fort Detroit, somewhere around here. Wait a minute, hang on. It said Fort Detroit right there. What the hell? What the hell? Okay, so Fort Detroit was right here in the middle of this intersection. Apparently, it's been completely demolished and enveloped by the city. But Fort Detroit was there, and it was it was like a fairly considerable stronghold for the area, but we're talking about the War of 1812, so a fairly considerable stronghold is being held by like 160 guys. So it wasn't like big in modern standards, but still, it was a pretty cool moment during the war. And also, it was kind of a part of the British Canadian campaign that was going on in this area in what would be called, I believe, Ontario. Yeah, Ontario in the modern day. I was about to say something completely different. But, what do you mean,
You know what I mean exactly. Also, by the way, we love Canadians, by the way, but like, unfortunately, doesn't mean it's an inside comment.
I know what you mean now. Yeah, that's like nothing against Canadians. Something against a particular experience that we have with something. We're not going to get into it too much. But anyways, another interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about is that there was this whole thing that happened, speaking of a rabbit hole with the War of 1812, in the area around Niagara Falls, because back in the day, when the British controlled Niagara, which is right up here in Canada nowadays, and then the United States controlled Buffalo down here, there was this little skirmish that went on in between British and American troops in this area. And if I remember the story correctly, America crossed the Niagara River, went into Niagara, fought the British, ended up, I think, looting some houses, and I think shooting a few British Canadians, and then crossed back across the Niagara River when larger British reinforcements arrived. The British then, enraged, crossed across the river, ran the Americans all the way down the Niagara River past Buffalo, and then they went into Buffalo, burned Buffalo to the ground, and shot a decent amount of people down there as well. And it was pretty interesting. It was like a massacre per massacre kind of a play happening in this area, but still a pretty interesting one at that. But still, with that, I hope that does address that little thing well. Also, the gold being found in Alaska, that's a pretty cool part of history as well, because their gold rush wasn't like the California gold rush, because the California gold rush easily like boomed California's population compared to what it did for Alaska, because Alaska was a lot more difficult to reach for a lot of people, that is. And also Alaska is a lot more inhospitable than California was. But still, thank you for sharing that little day in the history thing. That is incredibly cool of you. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel keep on running. And we will make sure to grab a question from the chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question here in honor of GunFox's super chat. This one is going to go to, let's see here. It's going to go to Melody Francis, who says, are the Ukrainians pushing hard to dig in for the winter?
I think the Ukrainians are pushing as hard as they can just to get as much ground as they can. But once the fall months start to hit the Rasputitsa, we're probably going to see that they start to dig in. So give it about another month, maybe 2 months, and we'll probably see that they start to dig in very heavily and try and last as long as they possibly can in this area. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, thank you so much once again, GunFox61, for the day in the history super chat, and also sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like y'all who helped to make this channel possible. If it wasn't for folks like you, Gunfox61, and Purple Gerbil, and Toonsnod, and everyone else who super chatted this channel tonight and supported it and helped it to keep on running, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible day in and day out. It is only by viewer support alone that we're able to do this as a living and make this our full-time job, so that way we can cover this stuff each and every day. And for that, we are entirely grateful and appreciative to the few people who super chat this channel every night, because y'all make it possible for us to do this channel and run it for tens of thousands of people nightly. And so with that, huge thanks to y'all once again. And moving on from that and into Ukraine itself, we did get to see a fairly interesting location unknown. We got to see a Ukrainian drone that was modified to where it could use a machining gewehr. And we can see this drone right here dropping off a rifle.
That is pretty sick. That's like Uber weapons.
And then a few moments later, they fixed up the drone to where the AK was attached underneath. And they added a little control box to the AK itself. The drone goes flying off, AK attached. And in a second, y'all are going to see the drone gun. And look at it go.
Oh, no way. That is so cool. I don't know how that thing's handling the recoil from that gun, but that is pretty cool however that works.
That is pretty freaking cool. I'm not going to lie. That's actually incredibly cool.
That's the stuff you dream of as a little kid, having like a gun on like a drone or something like that. They can shoot at the target. That is so cool.
Man, this is what happens when you don't return your Amazon package that you refunded. Like, they sent in these. Like, man, still really cool. Love to see them. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see some Russian losses as well. And they were incredibly high today. Oh!
16 Bobcats, let's go. That's very good to see. I love to see it. We're creeping up on getting close to almost 3,000 Bobcats destroyed. That is lovely to see. Also, I do see Miss Deese over there with a correction, but Enforcer, tell us more.
And of course, the losses are incredibly good. And it doesn't look like Miss Deese has a correction. She's just stating that the personnel losses today are the 10th highest day of losses in the entirety of the war. And it was an incredibly high day in the casualty report. 1,330 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 35 APCs, 73 supply trucks, 12 main battle tanks, 59 artillery pieces, 61 drones, 5 MLRSs, 1 cruise missile, and 16 Bobcat skid steers. Today was an incredibly good day, all holds barred, for the Ukrainian armed forces, and it looks as though, as far as the defensive is concerned, they are still inflicting a wildly high number of casualties onto the Russian forces that are attempting to advance deeper into Ukraine. Moving on into the actual active front lines that we have today from video and picture evidence, we didn't hear a lot out of Vovchansk. We also didn't hear a lot out of the Kremenna Forest area, but we did get a little bit of news out of the Chasiv Yar direction. We did get to see that the Ukrainian drone blew up an Orlan 10 today over the city of Chasiv Yar, if the video loads. And this may be giving me signs that bad things are happening, and they're not, apparently. It's just that this video is loading very slowly, and here we go. It's about to be a nice good impact by this Orlan 10, and we're going to be muting the EK. And we see them coming right up onto the Orlan, hitting it and blowing it up right there. Nice.
Slow.
Coleslaw.
I just realized it looked like that kid was smoking a joint. That did not look like a cigarette. That looks like a joint.
Aw, man.
And it's him, a hot dog man's out here.
Aw, man. You're not taking paid vacations to Ukraine, you bastard. Aw, man. But anyways, moving on from that and down the line a little bit, we also got to see the 92nd doing some work as well. But before we do, Belarusian military commanders are saying that there's a high probability of armed provocations by Ukraine. And what's happening? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are people thinking that's happening? And what are you thinking is happening too?
All right, so now that we're hearing the Belarus military command make statements like there's a high probability of armed provocations by the Ukrainian military onto their territory of Belarus, what do you think's happening? About 39% said Belarus might false flag attack Ukraine on Russia's behalf, while 29% said it simply seems like mouth running by the Belarusians, and 25% said Belarus is simply distracting only on Putin's behalf. And on this one, I have to say that it's really a close call because this just started happening a couple of days ago. Belarus started making these very inflammatory statements about Ukraine and what they could do to their territory. Once again, like the enforcer mentioned, they threatened to nuke Ukraine if they invaded Belarusian territory. And then today, they're saying there's a high probability that something will happen by the Ukrainian forces on their territory. So I would say that's probably a distraction. That's probably the first option. But also, I would not put it past Putin to try to set Lukashenko up to do a false flag attack on Ukraine. And let's say if there's suddenly a narrative that comes out that Ukraine's trying to do a dirty bomb or something like that on their territory, that might give Belarus the justification they need to go in and do something like this. So I'm actually with the 25%. I think it's a distraction, but it could be a false flag style attack coming up. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my honest opinion, in my 100% unmitigated, fact-checked opinion, I would have to say Belarus might be trying to create some sort of a situation where they can false flag a situation with Ukraine where they can get involved in the war. That may be what they're trying to do. Once again, there's not really a lot of backing inside of Belarus for an actual plan like this to be carried out. But if there is, or if there is a way that they can sway the Belarusian military into supporting some kind of a conflict with Ukraine, this may be the moment. Or it may be some sort of a distraction from what's going on inside of Russia and trying to pull Ukraine towards Belarus so that way they can't fully dedicate to the Kursk offensive and also dedicate themselves to the defense of the area around Chasiv Yar and Pokrovsk as well. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And moving on from that and down in the Kursk, we also got to see the 92nd Assault Brigade using some remote-controlled demining equipment. Look at this field of sunflowers. Look at these Ukrainian demining operators. Look at them grabbing the mines. This is a demining operation. This is democracy manifest.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to take that joke if you didn't say it.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, we're on the same page tonight. I don't know what it is, but I feel completely spaced out tonight. I don't know if you can tell, Matthew. I feel detached. But anyways, moving on.
I can tell just a little bit, but just hang in there, man, because hopefully you're not getting what I had or what I have currently. Hopefully you're not getting that because the brain fog is certainly a thing with it. Whenever I jump on the stream, like every single night, it takes me like a solid 20 minutes to like get in the right like mental spot to be able to do the stream because I hop on here like all zoned out and conked out from this thing. So hopefully you're not getting what I have.
Hopefully not. Also, let's see here. Just looking in the chat, I don't know if you're seeing this, Mandy, but someone keeps on emphasizing that one front is doing terribly. Oh my God, you must cover it. They're losing so badly. Keep an eye on them because I can't tell if that's just them wanting to hear a little bit about it or if that's some sort of a Russian bot. I can't really tell, but make sure to keep a little bit of a closer eye on them. Also, everyone's saying quarantine, Matt, quarantine. It's too late for that because Matthew got right up on me when I was in the pantry last night with my mom looking for snacks. He literally stuck his head in the door like 2 feet behind me. So if he had something and was going to transmit it, it probably happened then. And so there's no a real opportunity at this point for me to not get it. I will probably end up getting it at some point. But to really be honest with y'all, I'm feeling kind of spaced out and tired because I've been doing the videos and the streams every day, all day for like the past 4 days. And weirdly enough, I feel like I'm hardly getting enough sleep right now, and I'm getting completely exhausted, like really to be entirely honest. So I'm just trying to keep it hanging in there, you know what I mean? But moving on from
also,
that.
by the way, I gotta clarify this real quick because it made it sound like I intentionally tried to get the enforcer sick. I did not know he was in the pantry when I stuck my head around the corner. I thought my mother was in there, but also he was in there as well. So I was like, oh damn, and then I forgot. I was like, oh damn, I shouldn't have gotten the pantry this close. I'm going to get everybody sick. So it was not intentional because that made me sound terrible right there. And also, someone said phrasing, please phrasing. That phrasing was a little bit odd. I'm not gonna lie, the phrasing sounded a little bit odd. I just poked my head around the corner of the pantry to see what was going on, and that was it. There's no getting up on nobody or nothing like that. So just to make that clear.
Yeah, well, you know, that would be really weird to insinuate anything out of that. But still, with that, moving on from that and down into the area around Pokrovsk, we did get to see the 47th Brigade using some drone forces to try and knock out some Ruski infantry. And here's the clip.
Чи граната, чи щось таке.
Вот она.
Єсть, хороший.
And they hit the BTR. The BTR is on fire and smoking.
Замедляється.
Давайте полетимо до гони.
Роз'єб, горить!
А, чекайте.
Oh.
Там точно 2 200, 1 300, механ уйобує. Давайте доб'ємо.
Да. Під сраку, да? Оба!
When you see them hitting it again, the fire is burning quite profusely at this point.
Це були ми.
Ну що, сьогодні день у нас нормальний такий. Давно ми беху не бачили. Взагалі техніку.
Давно ми техніку не бачили.
And with that, that's the end of the clip, but still really interesting to see, and good to know the 47th is doing the best work they can. Meanwhile, we also got to see how a kitchen in the area is working in the 47th Brigade as well. And we're going to have to mute it, but we can see them here putting on the aprons. They're about to be cooking Chef Ramsay style. A lot of people don't get to see this kind of work that goes on in the background in some of these brigades, like in a field kitchen like this. But this is supposedly a field kitchen of the 47th Brigade. And I gotta tell y'all, it's pretty freaking high-end for a field kitchen.
That's pretty nice to be able to fit that in the back of a Sprinter. And also, that's a super nice Sprinter van, by the way, like all blacked out. Like, this is actually really cool for a field kitchen. I think the U.S. Army uses, like, field kitchens that you can, like, pop up like a tent, I think.
Yeah, I think they do. This is actually pretty interesting as far as this kind of stuff goes. And I mean, it looks like they're cooking up some pretty freaking good food. I mean, like, they got the fish, skin still attached. That's when you know it's high-end right there, when it's going to taste real bussin'.
Put in the air fryer. That's, oh, got some spaghetti coming up. That's, or whatever that is. Looks pretty good.
Spaghetti. I was like, that is not spaghetti.
Water. And I was like, I don't think that's spaghetti. He's putting in boiling water all of a sudden.
Man, and we got the stew, and then we got the fish. We got the sour cream.
That is a deep spoon. That's for taking big bites right there. Oh, he's eating. What, did he eat the skin on the fish?
Yeah, he ate the skin on the fish.
Oh.
The skin's pretty good.
Ugh.
And that's the end of the clip, but that was a field kitchen of the 47th Brigade. I'm not sure if all of them are like that. I'm kind of doubting it, really, but still, that's very high-end as far as we can tell. As far as the situation is going in Pokrovsk, it is a little difficult at the moment. The Russians are continuing to advance towards the city, right over here at Pokrovsk. It doesn't look like they made incredibly massive advances today, and let me make sure to update the map just to make sure. And so it doesn't look like they made incredibly large ones. Once again, it's the fairly small advances, but they keep on making fairly small advances every single day. And so they are starting to get closer and closer to Pokrovsk, and a battle will most likely start to happen there here on in the future. But moving on from that and out of this area, it is now time for us to move all the way down and into Kherson, where we also got to see a Panzer S1 get hit and destroyed within this area as well. And so here's the clip. And we're going to be muting that. But we can see the Panzer S1 right there.
Also, I can still hear it, by the way.
Yes, you can, actually. That was a very good observation on your end. But we can see the impact right near the Panzer S1. Believe it. And we see them watching the trucks drive away, run away for the large part. Bless me. Sorry.
Oh, bless you.
Well, thank you. But oh, dang. Okay.
Damn. That just went everywhere.
Look at that boiler. But still, with that, that's the other clip. Really nice to see that they were able to get that Panzer, though. Another $15 million down the drain. And meanwhile, off the coast of Odessa, we also got to see that a ship was hit in the nearby area, from what we could tell. It's one of the grain-carrying ships that has been traveling into and out of Odessa for a while. It looks like it may have been hit near the engine bay based off where the smoke is coming from. It looks like the Russians may have hit it with an anti-ship missile, but we are not entirely sure yet. At the moment, we're going to hopefully get more information about this as time passes, but still, it does look like the Russians are once again trying to instill some sort of a blockade against the port of Odessa and the grain shipments that are heading out from that area. Moving on from that and into the city of Kerch, we also got to hear that Kerch did come under attack over the last few hours. We were able to see that fires were raging in the city, right near the Kerch city sign right there, and also, most importantly, inside the city itself. We don't know exactly what the Ukrainians were going for or targeting inside the city, but we did get to hear the state of emergency was announced on a municipal level within the city of Kerch. We can also see that they have one of those stupid, weird, like, ribbon wall things right here with a Z and a V. I don't know what the V is for. We know what the Z is, but still a little interesting. And also, I would generally have to say, just adding this in as well, it seems as though the city of Kerch is coming once again under attack, and Russian air defense wasn't really able to protect Kursk. And so the big question is it going to be able to protect the Kerch Bridge? Because that is now, once again, a major supply corridor from what we understand at the moment. But with that, without further ado, it is now time for us to move on up into Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 905 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech, the incredibly short speech, but still a long-lasting speech. And so, speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Головне, було вже кілька доповідей головкома Сирського про фронтову ситуацію та про нашу операцію в Курській області. Бачимо, що окупант несе втрати, і це корисно, дуже корисно для нашої оборони. Це стосується знищення логістики російської армії і витрати їхніх резервів. Ми маємо максимально завдавати ураження всім російським позиціям. І робимо це. Я дякую кожному нашому воїну за влучність. Дякую за силу та за стійкість. Головком Сирський доповів щодо наших оборонних кроків на Донбасі. Це Покровський напрямок, Торецький, а також наш рух в Курській області. Прибираємо там російську військову присутність на території наших дій та поповнюємо обмінний фонд для нашої держави. Друге. Прибули для роботи в Україні нові посли держав-партнерів Бельгія, Індія, Нідерланди, Словаччина, Італія, Мексика. Прийняв вірчі грамоти, вдячний за чітку підтримку нашої територіальної цілісності та міжнародного права. І сьогодні ж провів кілька нарад щодо подальшої роботи для наближення миру для України, справедливого миру і для захисту наших людей. Ми готуємо новини. Ще одне за сьогодні, надзвичайно важливо. Говорив з членами Ради церков та релігійних організацій. І вдячний за підтримку нашого курсу на духовну незалежність України. В Верховній Раді запропоновано законопроект, який може реально гарантувати, що не буде жодних маніпуляцій з Москви Українською церквою. Цей законопроект повинен спрацювати і повинен додати Україні соборності, реальної нашої єдності, єдності духовної. Дякую всім, хто зміцнює незалежність України. Слава Україні!
And Hiram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 905 of the war. And with that, that moves us on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. Before we even get into that, though, I've got to once again say, like we've been saying for many nights in a row, a huge thanks to everyone who has been watching tonight. Tonight at the peak, there was 13,000 people here live at one single time. And so far, about 72,000 people have watched this stream since it started. I've got to say a huge thanks and a huge shout out to every single one of y'all once again for finding this channel to be your primary source of news every single day of the war. We put a lot of work and effort into this thing, and I got to thank you so much. Thank all of y'all so much once again for watching this so far tonight, and I hope that y'all stick around because we got a load of fun stuff coming on around the corner. We have loads of questions, loads of super chats, and loads of live chats as well. And so we will be making sure to get on into each and every single one of them that we can. And with that, we are going to be moving on into them right about now. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks. So entering the final question segment of the night, we have one poll to go with right here. And this one right here says, Russia now threatens to eliminate Western journalists in the Kursk region that are now in Kursk inside of mainland Russia. And the question is, would Russia actually do it? 54% said yes, Russia would take them out, while 25% said no, but it would escalate dramatically. And 13% said maybe, but I need more intel. And just in case you're not aware, for some reason, CNN has sent journalists into the Kursk region right there in the town of Sudzha, right there on the border of Ukraine and Russia, where Ukraine currently controls that town. I got to admit, I'm not a huge fan of CNN. I'll say that right off the bat because I don't really like their journalism and their reporting that they do. It's not really objective in my opinion. But I will say this. That is pretty ballsy to go into that territory as a journalist right now, is that is very risky, because now Russia is threatening to go in there and kill those guys. So knowing that, and they're staying there to report on the war, that's actually pretty respectable in my opinion, so I will give them credit for that. But me personally, I would say that Russia actually might try to take them out. Russia is getting very desperate. They don't want the embarrassment to get even worse by having reporters from the West hanging out inside their territory and documenting the whole thing. So I'm with the 55%. I think Russia will try to get them, but it's probably going to be a little bit further down the road. Not right this second, because that would be a little bit too soon. They literally just announced it, I think it was like a couple of days ago. So those journalists over there can add themselves to the list like we're on, that Russia wants to take us out as well. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say the Russians probably are going to give it a shot. They'll probably fail, or the Ukrainians will make sure to keep them generally safe, or hopefully they'll keep their locations fairly undisclosed while they're in the area and then just upload all of their footage after they've left. That would probably be the best thing that could be done, in my opinion, but I have a feeling they probably will be targeting him. If y'all don't know this is something fairly interesting as well. The FSB actually stated about a day or two ago that they are now going to be targeting pro-Ukrainian military bloggers, which that would include us here on this channel. So apparently not only are we on the list, but CNN is now also on the list. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the next question. But before we do, I actually saw someone ask in the chat, do you have a runny nose, Enforcer? And yes, I do. I'm starting to get a little bit of a runny nose. I think Matthew's passed it on to me, and unlike Matthew, if I get it, this stream is probably going to not be running until I'm over with it, because unlike Matthew, I have to talk the entire show, and if my throat's really sore and hurting and I feel like crap, I can't really mask that as well as Matthew does, because I have to have an active role talking nonstop for 3 hours. Matthew just kind of gets to focus on everything with spreadsheets mostly, and I can do, like, you know, I can take over all the talking. So if I get sick, this show will probably be on a little bit of a hiatus until I get better, kind of like back when I had the Chinese whirlybird. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I gotta say this real quick about the whole situation with journalists being threatened inside of Kursk, that I find it kind of interesting. I'm not trying to brag or anything. I don't think it's really a bragging right to say you're on an assassination list or something like that. But CNN, being a humongous organization like they are, they were not the first on the hit list from Russia. We were the first on the hit list, because, like the Enforcer said the other day, the FSB said they wanted to take us out, along with a whole bunch of other pro-Ukraine bloggers as well. So very interesting, by the way. Also, I'd be curious to see how Russia plans on carrying that out. But I'll leave that up to them. But they know that Alabama, they stay packing in Alabama. But with that, we're jumping into our super chat questions here. And the first one is going to go to Steve Watkins at work. He is still at work, and thank you very much, Steve Watkins, for that $50 support. Thank you very much. He said, time for a little support for the guys. And thank you for all that you give us. And take a chat question, please. And LSA, and people hit the like.
And thank you so much for sending in a great deal of support, Steve Watkins. That isn't a little bit of support. That is a massive amount of support. And I got to thank you massively for enjoying this channel, always being here, Steve Watkins, and helping us to keep this thing running, because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible. Thank you so much for enjoying everything that we try and put out for everyone every single day on this channel. We put out short war summaries. We put out these streams. We go to the max every single day. I've gone to the max so much, I haven't been able to leave the house for like the past 2 weeks, because pretty much every single day we're doing something. I gotta say though that I absolutely love doing it. I cannot state it enough that I really do enjoy everything that we do on this channel. It's one of the greatest things that we ever have been able to do. In fact, it is the greatest thing that I've ever been able to do, is getting to share all the news with y'all. And I gotta thank y'all all once again for the support and helping this channel to be possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Steve Watkins, we wouldn't be able to be here right now and keeping this channel running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And Matthew, what do we got from the live chat?
All right, so this question from the live chat is going to go to Original Prankster, who said, do you and the Enforcer think that a bomb/missile of that size could take out the Kerch Bridge?
I would say no. A bomb or a missile the size of the one that hit the Glushkovo bridge probably wouldn't knock out the Kerch bridge. Reason being, the Glushkovo bridge, while large for the area, is very small compared to the mass and weight of a single span of the Kerch bridge. So the explosive mass needed to uproot the Glushkovo bridge from its supports would be a lot less than what would be needed for the Kerch bridge and blowing its supports away, or at least knocking the spans off of the supports. So to be entirely honest, I would say that that probably would not be enough of an ordnance or enough of a bomb to be able to knock apart the Kerch bridge and knock it out for a while. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. Thank you so much once again for Steve Watkins at Work's massive support in helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to Dixie LaFleur, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Dixie, as well, for always supporting the channel. And we appreciate it, and also we notice it very much. And they said, y'all rock, and take your zinc and your vitamin C. And I've been taking all that stuff, not the zinc, sadly. I don't have any of that on hand, but the vitamin C, I've been taking that and all kinds of other stuff as well. So whatever it is that I've got, it's a lingering thing, because right now I still have it, but I'm able to sort of like power through it a little bit better. And it's just sort of like taking me down. I did, like, I don't know if there's too much information or not, but I did test negative for the whirlybird. So I don't know if it's a test is inaccurate or what, but apparently I don't have that. Whatever it is, though, it sucks. Because it's just lurking around. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, quite fortunately, I do not have the whirlybird. I do not have the whirlybird. I'm not going to have it again, hopefully. I haven't been taking any zinc, but I do take a little bit of vitamin C. I think you get vitamin C from citrus. And I have been enjoying some of the citrusy drinks lately. They are quite good. But still, thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much, Dixie LaFleur, for always being with this channel, always helping it to keep on running. And thank you so much for saying that we rock. All of y'all rock. And that's the reason why we go through so much effort, so much dedication, and so much sacrifice along the way to keep this channel running every single day. Well, you don't have to keep this channel running every single day. That's honestly the truth. We could take many days off if we wanted to, pretty much like anyone else who's in this category that pretty much treats it like it's a hobby instead of an actual business of telling y'all what's going on. But the reason why we always do this 6 days a week and we're so continuous with it is because we really appreciate all of y'all watching every single day, and we find that to be an incredibly high honor, and we don't want to let y'all down by having y'all miss a day of news that didn't have to be missed. And so a massive thanks to you once again, Dixie LaFleur, and thank you once again for letting us keep this channel running and helping it to be possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And also I saw Troy Fox in the live chat. I said, whiskey cures everything. I'm not going to lie. At one point during the sickness, I actually thought about that. I was like, I don't drink alcohol, but I was sitting there thinking, I feel so bad. I'm like, I had to just like get a little bit of that. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to take the painkiller and move on. But you know, it's just terrible when you feel ill. It's just terrible. And it takes a while to get over. But anyways, with that, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Mitchell Halverson, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much as well, Mitchell, for that support. He said, do you think that China, meaning Xi, will pull support if Russia continues to do so poorly in the Kursk offensive?
I do not think so. The Chinese haven't really offered a lot of lethal support as is, and most of their support is non-lethal from what we understand. And I don't think they'll be pulling that anytime soon, because it doesn't really matter whether the Russians do good or bad. It just matters that they're trying to support their own interests in the larger world picture. And so as long as they're doing that, or at least trying to work towards that, they'll probably continue to support them for quite some time, at least in my opinion. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for having a very, very interesting question. Generally, I would say that the Chinese are pretty dead set in what they're doing. It's a part of a larger plan that they have, and they're usually the kind of a country that doesn't dedicate themselves to any kind of actions unless if they're a part of some sort of a longer-term plan or a longer-term initiative, which right now they're working towards national rejuvenation, or a great rejuvenation, which is what the Chinese call reaching the level of a world superpower by 2049. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Steve T, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Steve T, as well, for that support, and also being a longtime channel viewer as well. He said, do you have any evidence of Ukraine digging and building offensive lines or defensive lines and minefields to hold the Russian territory?
We haven't, which shows that the Ukrainians are still working on offensive objectives at the moment, and they're still expecting that they can continue to move forward beyond the positions that they have right now. 1 second, everyone. I'm about to sneeze. Okay, I'm not really sure if I am or not. But beyond that, I think many people can start to hear my nose is running really badly because I can even hear it right now through the headset and everything. But beyond that, I haven't seen them building any defensive lines yet, which still shows that they're on an offensive. If they were trying to conduct any kind of a defensive at this point, we would see that they would start constructing the defensive lines a little bit behind where they currently are right now so they could fall back onto the defensive lines, but we're not seeing that at the moment, which is still showing that the Ukrainians are getting enough progress and enough positive benefits, at least at the moment, from their offensive advances or pushes that they don't really find it necessary to set up defensive structures at the moment yet. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, Steve T, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to go to Beef Taco, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Beef Taco, for that support as well. He said, what is your opinion on how long Ukraine will continue to be in Russia?
Very good question, Beef Taco, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for being an old guard as well. To answer your question, I think that the Ukrainians are probably going to be in Russia for a very long time. Probably indefinitely until they're actually physically removed from the Kursk Oblast by the Russian army. That's what I'm thinking at the moment, because it seems as though the Ukrainians are not showing that they're going to be leaving anytime soon. It's also certainly not a temporary offensive objective, because we did get a report from the 110th Brigade that ammunition has been diverted from the Pokrovsk front and into the area of Kursk, which is leaving them in a bit of a bind defensively down in the area of Pokrovsk at the moment. But it is still showing us that this offensive is being considered a major objective of the Ukrainian army at this point, as it's being prioritized for supplies and such things like that. And so this is showing that for now, this is most likely going to be an indefinite incursion into Russia, and they're going to be trying to get as much out of it as they can. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Huge thanks to you once again, Beef Taco, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Zagoon, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much for that support as well. And I do not see a comment to address on this one, but thank you very much to Zagoon for that $10 support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you massively for the support, Zagoon, and helping this channel to keep on running. If it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now, running this channel and getting to share the news with everyone, including you. I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and enjoying this channel so much that you find it worthwhile to support it and help it to keep on running. If it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so a massive thanks once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, Darren, also for that support. He said it's time to hit and wipe out the Kerch Bridge. And I'm telling you what, it's been a minute. The Ukrainians have been saying they're going to take it out. And even Budanov himself, the Ukrainian intelligence chief, he said it's coming down, I believe, this year. So it should be coming around time for that thing to get hit. And they're going to need a big one for that. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to completely agree with you, Darren Quinn. I'd say that it's time for them to hit the Kerch Bridge again, a second time. I think it's a long time coming. I think they need to slam that thing and slam it hard. And Ivan and his men were up on their tiny bridge, and they were getting pounded. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, I'll be entirely honest with y'all folks. I'm not really feeling that hot. I know many people can kind of hear that a little bit. It's starting to set in. I think the bug has been passed to me. And so I'm going to be moving a little bit quicker through these super chats because I'm feeling hot. I got snot in my nose, and it's harder to talk considering I can't breathe through my nose anymore. I have to breathe through my mouth and talk, which makes it very hard to keep up the kind of pace and tempo I usually do. So we're going to start speeding through this a little bit quicker, so that way I can get off air and focus on feeling bad. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our next super chat here, let me get one more from the live chat here. This one right here is going to go to Oliver Queen, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Oliver, for the support. They said, guys, if you need help with names of towns, the names of towns in Ukraine and Russia, I can help you on a daily basis, and I just send you messages via Discord, and I'm Ukrainian, and I'm fluent in Russian, and Ukrainian.
And thank you so much for the support, Oliver Queen, and thank you for helping the channel to keep it running. Thank you for offering us a very nice thing. That's incredibly kind of you. I would say that we would do that, but generally with how the news has to be made pretty much right before the stream goes live, there's not really a lot of time in between to be able to do a lot with other people. Sadly, that probably wouldn't be possible because by the time you were able to get that back to us, we probably would be live on air at that point and probably would have covered that or moved on from it or something along those lines. So it would help a little bit, but it wouldn't really help getting it ready on a daily basis because the turnaround time for these streams is incredibly small because we have to do so much in the day beforehand. We don't really have a lot of time to do additional stuff like that because it's such a small window to be able to get the stream ready and all that stuff. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Scott Kemp, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Scott, for that support as well. And he said, better all the time, and thanks, guys.
And thank you so much for saying that we're getting better all the time. I feel like tonight might not be the case because I am certainly getting sick at this point, 100%. But I thank you so much once again for appreciating this channel, enjoying it, and supporting it, and helping it to keep on running. As it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible. And so with that, huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. We are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Darren Quinn once again, who puts in another $10 super chat. And he says, Kursk offensive map looks like head of Weevil Man.
Weevil Man?
Weevil Man.
Oh, it does. It kind of does a little bit. It looks like the Weevil.
Yeah.
It kind of does. Like you can see like the eyes up here, the nose, the chin on this thing. But beyond that, I would agree with you. It kind of does look like that Weevil down there in Alabaster. Well, not Alabaster. Where is that? Enterprise. Look at Sharp, Enterprise. Look at Sharp. We can go down there again and look at that thing. While I sniffle up a storm. So let's see here. That damn Weevil's going to be right here. Oh, God! It's the Weevil!
Oh, that thing's terrible. It's gone, I think, in the present, by the way. I think it's missing.
It's gone, but not forgotten. Everyone's going to remember the damn McWeevil. That thing was horrendous. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who helped to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to David Koger, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, David, as well. He said, Russians are moving troops from the south to Kursk via trains. And does Ukraine have weapons with the range to interdict?
They don't have the range with weapons to interdict the trains heading to Kursk. Most of those lines have actually been shut down as well. One of them is impacted in dealing with delayed scheduling issues right now, and that's the one from Kursk to Bryansk, I believe. So from what we understand, they are moving forces into the area, but I don't think they have anything with enough range to be able to strike those trains while they're on the move. And so with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Spook161, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Spook, for that support. They said, what are your thoughts about Ukraine needing to back out or hunker down before the rainy season and or the winter? And the winters tend to work in the favor of Russia.
Thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Spook. But I'd have to be entirely honest. I don't think winters have ever really worked in favor of the Russians. Generally, from what we've seen historically in the war, winters really work for neither side, and the front lines largely become completely stagnant during the winter months. So I would generally have to say the Ukrainians probably will not be withdrawing during that time. The Ukrainians are going to be staying there for as long as they possibly can, and that probably will end up being at least a year. Even the Russians are saying that if the Ukrainians dig in at this point, it will be a year, even by their most optimistic timetables, that it will take for them to be able to... Hello? Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello? Does your internet go out too?
I believe it did. All right, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Can you hear
Oh, good.
me? I
Yes,
think
I can hear you.
I think you can hear me. I just want them to listen to me. But beyond that, I hope that does address that the best I can about the whole retreating before winter. They're not going to be doing that or in the fall either. They're probably going to be there for an incredibly long time because even the Russians believe it'll take at least a year to push them out, and they're also not expecting the Ukrainians to be leaving anytime soon. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Thank you so much once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to the Net Dragon, who butts in a $10
Hey!
donation, and they said, "Can we see the marmot and can we see the fly?"
Of course you can. Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello
Hey!
there. It's Alan. Hello, good sir. We're all sniffling and we're all sickly. Oh dear me. Oh dear. He said, oh dear. He's spitting up blood, so the marmot's in worse shape than we are. But I'm telling you, the sniffles is a devil for the drink. I'm telling you what. But let's see the fly. Let's hear him.
Aw, man. Aw, man. I got another 100 subs. I'm on top of the world. Aw, man. 1K subs in 1 year. Aw, man. Return of the legend. Aw, man.
Enjoy it, white last bastard.
That's a good one. but beyond that, I had to get the marmot zoom in and zoom out before I did that. But still, that is a good one. But before we move on, I have to go back down here and do this. Aw, man, the people I doxed and harassed and physically threatened and had my community go threaten them with death and try to get them swatted at their law school in Birmingham. Aw, man, they keep on bringing me up and making jokes about me. Aw, man, they're harassing me, little old me. What did I do to deserve this joking about me on most streams? Aw, man. Oh man, I gotta tell you, what a funny thing that is. What a funny thing. And also, what's even funnier, I saw this last night, Matthew, because you know I went on to that small talk about how that happened and how Hot Dog Man and his community actually threatened our lives for about a good year at least, and have been
Yes.
harassing us for about 2. And then I brought up how some other YouTubers backed him up in the middle of that when we tried to take action against the guy and everything. I saw some people, I didn't address this last night, but thinking about it now, I think I'll address it because I see some of those people here tonight. They said, wait a minute, what if those other YouTubers who were backing up and supporting him in that, what if they didn't know about everything that he had done to you? Oh, that's a great idea. That sounds wonderful if that was the case, but they did know. Because our community would start going over to their channels after they'd say stuff about us, and they'd be like, dude, do you know what this guy has done to the enforcers and what his community has done? And the answer was the same every single time. No, I didn't know that, and that does sound kind of bad. Although that's literally like all the cardinal sins that you could break on YouTube were being broken by Hot Dog Man and his community, like doxing people, physically harassing them and threatening them, that kind of stuff. And every single YouTuber who had backed him up would say the same thing. They'd go, yeah, that's bad, but the enforcers shouldn't have done what they did to him, so whatever. That was the answer every single time. And it's crazy to see that. Because like I was saying last night, in any other community in YouTube, you would see that everyone would band together. Every single YouTuber would band together when they heard that someone was getting doxxed, and they go, whoa, that's wrong. You shouldn't be doxing people. That's like a cardinal sin on YouTube, is to dox someone. And like, if y'all don't believe me about getting doxxed, our parents' house, which we live in, is the thumbnail of one of Hot Dog Man's videos. Like, it's still out there on YouTube. Like, it has not been removed by the Hot Dog Man or anything. So if you're doubting that we've been doxxed, it's literally a thumbnail. Our house is in a thumbnail of a video. Like, no joke at all. No lie about that. And so people know that we were getting doxxed, and no one cared. And if it was any other section on YouTube, I feel like people would have cared. They would have been like, that's wrong. That shouldn't be happening. They wouldn't have sided with the guy. They would have understood why we were taking action against the guy, because he's putting our lives in danger. And so it's really crazy to have to deal with something like that and then see everyone side with that guy. It's just bizarre to see something like that. And I bring that up every once in a while, and I still, and some people go, oh, you know what? Why don't you forgive and forget? I don't forgive and forget because it wasn't just me who was in danger. It was Matthew who was in danger, which is my brother and a family member. And then they were also putting my parents in danger because they're the ones who own the house and live in it as the primary residence. So they weren't just putting me in danger, they were putting my entire family in danger, all at one good time. And so, no, I don't forgive and forget people like that who did that to my family, and I don't forgive and forget people who supported someone who did that kind of stuff to our family and then just brushed it aside and acted like it was no big deal. That is something that is crazy to me, to think that people would want us to do that. We're never going to do that, and I'm generally going to die on that hill. Don't care what people have to say or think about that and how other people try and rewrite or revision the story. That's what actually happened, and I'm not going to forgive people for doing that kind of stuff against us. That's absolutely absurd to do so, considering that we're still kind of in danger right now. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here is going to go to Andy L, who puts in a very generous $100 donation, the largest one of the night. And thank you very much, Andy, for persevering, because he's had significant difficulties trying to get that through tonight. In fact, he messaged me on Twitter about it to let me know that YouTube was acting up. And sadly, there's nothing we can do about it on our end because YouTube has to fix that on their end. And Andy's not the only one that's had a problem with that. It's been actually happening for about a month now that YouTube's been having problems with their super chats. But thank you for persevering, Andy, and sending that through to support the channel. We appreciate it very much. And sadly, there's no comment to address. But with that, Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the massive support, Andy. I also saw that message pop up on my phone, and I went, dang. I was like, YouTube's doing that crap again. Because we were wondering, because usually folks like you, Andy L, super chat every single night, and every once in a while we'll see that the people who regularly support the channel aren't supporting the channel, and then I'm like, that's interesting. I was like, what's up with that? And I'm always assuming that it's something that YouTube's doing, and it sounds like it was something that YouTube's doing again tonight. I still got to thank you, though, for persevering and supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and I got to say, a massive shout out once again, a massive thanks to you, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And so with that, a huge thanks once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here is going to go to LSA Rocks, who's also a channel legend. He puts in a 50 this time and does not leave a comment. And also a huge shout out to LSA Rocks for always supporting the channel in a massive way as well. And we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta give a massive shout out to LSA Rocks and your support to the channel as well. You didn't throw in a comment, just like Andy L, but still, we are massively appreciative and thankful for your support, because I know that you really do enjoy the Lee Spring Army and want to see it keep on running as long as the channel as well. And of course, your support helps us to be able to do this as our full-time job, and we thank you massively for the support as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one, also, LSA Rock said he left a super sticker. Let me go back and see here. I might have missed it. And he did leave a super sticker. Look at that. He left that dog right there. It's got that dog in him. And he's holding up some fireworks or something, or a little fire stick right there. It says, "You're amazing" on it. So that is crazy to see. Also, there's explosions going on around his legs right there. Kind of interesting. But very cool super sticker. And Enforcer, what say you about the super
sticker? Sounds like anti-personnel mines to me. But beyond that... Thank you so much once again for support, LC Rocks. Pretty cool super sticker. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. Also, I saw someone, Matthew BPM, said, dissing on the IRA? Yeah. Like, they bombed innocent civilians a lot. Like, that was a thing they did. Like, I'm not generally a fan. I
think they may be joking, by the way.
Say what?
I think they may be joking, by the way.
Oh, well, I thought they were unironically being serious, because I was like, yeah, I'm dissing on the IRA. Like, I don't care what people say about Irish reunification. I think the way that you don't go around that is by terrorizing innocent British civilians living in the UK. Like, that seems to me kind of like a line that you shouldn't cross. Like, as far as like I was talking about earlier, interesting weaponry, strategy, and tactics that were used in a guerrilla kind of a warfare way, in a conventional way by the British and the IRA in Northern Ireland. But as far as everything else that the IRA did throughout the entirety of the Troubles was what I would, well, it wasn't what I'd say, it's what is legitimately called an act of terror throughout the entirety of the Troubles. So, yes, I am, like, if that was unironic, I am 100% dissing on the IRA because I'm not really a big fan of people who do that. On top of that, they were hard socialists, nearly communists, and I'm not really a big fan of that kind of a political leaning, much like I'm not really a big fan of fascism either, because both of them are different forms of thuggery. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, if that was an unironic question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $28 donation from Marlene Mercer LSA. And did not leave a comment, but huge shout out to you, Marlene, for that $28 support, and we appreciate it. Excuse me. So I appreciate that very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Marlene Mercer, LSA, and thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And while you didn't throw in a comment, the support means a lot, and I thank you greatly for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here, also, by the way, that person was not joking about that.
Yeah.
I don't understand how anybody could support the organization there that goes around causing a problem. You know, I'm trying to avoid a particular T word here, but that's a bad group. That's a bad group. That a group that goes around trying to portray their position by violence, that surely is not something to be supported. That has never worked. That's also not very democratic either. So I definitely don't support that, by the way. I'm not supporting that. I want to make that clear as well. But anyways, with that, we're moving on to this next super chat here, which goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a $12 donation. Hey! And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support as well. And also, I do have the energy tonight to do this. So Duncan has the animal noises. He says, Bamuba, moo, quack. The Enforcer got the fly virus. Oh, man, I'm telling you, Baba. Can we get a sickly quack? Quack. Competition. And cough, meow. Moo, ba, ba, ba. He said, any new member is wondering what the F is going on, ba, ba, ba. And yes, they're probably wondering that, Duncan. They're probably wondering what the hell is this. They're probably wondering that. But of course, Duncan always puts in the staple animal noises, and we are more than happy to do them because guess what? It's funny, we like it, and it also, thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for throwing in the traditional animal noises, Duncan VR. We always greatly appreciate them, and I thank you so much for being an old guard of this channel, helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, really quickly, before we move on to the next one, Matthew, I don't know if you're seeing this, but there are actually people unironically saying in the chat, no, the IRA were good guys. They never attack civilians. I can easily just pull, you know what, I'm going to do that. IRA attacks. Well, let me just go pull this up really quickly, because I don't know how in the world people are not, not really paying attention too much, because if you look at it's just Wikipedia, it says 508 to 644 civilians killed by the IRA. They even ended up killing an Irish soldier. Like, I don't even know how in the world you do that. You're supposed to be pro-Irish. You end up killing an Irish soldier. Okay, so I just want to put this out there as well. They killed as many civilians as they actually ended up killing soldiers in the British Army. Like, that's, you know, when you get into those numbers right there, you don't really look like a good guy. You look like someone who's trying to do something that it seems to be terrorizing people. Not to use the other word, because YouTube doesn't like that one specifically, but that doesn't really seem to be working out all too well. I think we can probably find a really good example. Let me see here. The Long War. Let's see here. I'm trying to find the specific part right here. Let's see. Some of the most indiscriminate bombing attacks were carried out by a unit called the Balkan Street Gang. Let's see. And aimed in addition. Let's see here. I'm trying to see where I can find one of the specific attacks. Oh, yeah, right here. The Guildford pub bombings. Now, let me ask you this. Are pubs military installations? No. So is it okay to plant a bomb in there and then blow it up? No. And so that seems to me not really a good thing to do, in my honest opinion, to be entirely honest with y'all. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because the IRA is not a group to be looked up to. Like, it's not a good group. it is an anti-Western group. And some people are going, well, how in the world can they be anti-Western when they're in the West? Well, I mean, like there was the American Communist Party and the American Fascist Party. That didn't mean they were pro-Western. They were clearly anti-Western. They're fascists and communists. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I could see some interesting comments still coming through. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on here to our next one. Also, I see John Person said, "What about the Roth IRA?" It's like, well, that one's a little bit different. That one's different. That one gets a pass. But that's not exactly a very violent organization right there. That's actually about growth. But anyways, moving on here to our next super chat, we have a $10 donation from Clockwise Gaming, and thank you very much for that support. By the way, I think that might be one of their first ever super chats. So thank you very much. They said there's always been allegations that the 1999 Russian apartment bombings that catalyzed the Second Chechen War was a false flag operation and helped rise Putin to power as well.
And I thank you for supporting. That's true. I believe those were called. It's not the Ulsan bombings. I forgot what they're called. But they actually happened, I believe, around Moscow, and it ended up taking out a lot of people. I think it killed 500 Russians in those attacks, and that's what they used to justify the Second Chechen War. It is believed that those are false flags these days because the way that the bombings occurred were so well thought out and deliberate, and there wasn't any real clear proof tying the Chechens to it. That's why they ended up going in. And also, the other thing that doesn't make sense is it's not like the Chechens bombed apartment buildings in Moscow because they were being oppressed by the Russians. The Chechens won the First Chechen War. Chechnya was actually an independent republic separate from Russia for those years leading up to the year 2000 when the Second Chechen War began and the Russians invaded Chechnya again. So why in the world would they conduct a bombing in Moscow against the Russians when they already won the first war and they were an actual independent republic separate from Russia? There was no real reason for that to have happened, and that's why a lot of people think it was a false flag, and I've honestly been under the understanding the entire time that that was most likely a false flag that was used to justify another invasion into Chechnya. And so with that, I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support. I would definitely agree with that as well, and it certainly was probably what brought Putin to power because he was the one who became the president of Russia in the year 2000 and then started the Second Chechen War right on the cusp of those bombings. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Politics in Espanol, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Politics in Spanish, for that support. They said, Slav Ukraine.
And Slav Ukrainian, thank you so much for the support. Politics in Spanish, and helping this channel to keep on running and enjoying it enough to support it and help this channel to keep on being possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sean Heaton, who puts in a $5 donation. And I don't know why, but when I said your last name, Sean Heaton, it reminded me of Will Wheaton. But anyways, moving on from that one. Sean said, have a great weekend and keep up the hard work, guys.
And thank you so much for the support, Sean. Hopefully we'll have a great weekend. Hopefully I'm just having a runny nose tonight and I'm not actually getting sick. If I'm actually getting sick, I'm going to be very, very sad, and I'm not going to be very happy because it's going to be very hard to run streams and also make videos at this point. Matthew will actually probably have to take over making videos, and I don't know when or how streams will work at that point, because if it becomes very hard for me to talk, which it probably will if I get sick, it's pretty difficult to run 3 hours of a show when you really can't talk in the first place. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Reborn the Fallen, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Reborn, for that support. And this says, a first-time supporter, hey! And said, what are the odds that Wagner will turn their coats again this time around?
We're not entirely sure. They're not happy with the Russian government. They also don't like Ukraine either. So they're kind of caught in the middle. Like, they don't really like either side enough. So I guess they'll fight against the Ukrainians, maybe, because at the end of the day, they are still kind of like leaning more towards the fascist end on the Russian side, and so they'll still probably like the Russian people more than they do the Ukrainians, and that'll be the one determining factor in making sure that they don't turncoat on the Russians a second time. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for supporting this channel for the first time ever, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to Eriskay Relati, who puts in a $5 donation. Thank you very much for that support, by the way. I said, thanks for the sister and for my birthday wishes. My name is Eriskay Ritali, or Eris, or Air is Sky Ritali. And keep up the good work.
And thank you so much for the support, Eriskay Ritali. And thank you once again for clarifying how to pronounce your name. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you so much for wanting us to keep up the good work. We are trying as hard as we can. I can promise you all that. I'm trying my best right here. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
Oh, yes, indeed. And up next, huge shout out to Glenn for putting in a $10 donation. That's his first ever super chat on the stream. And thank you very much, Glenn, for that support. We appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you so much, Glenn Spike, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this channel a reality and help us to keep this thing rolling. And thank you for your first super chat ever. Your support helps us to be able to keep this channel rolling, helps it to be possible. And I thank you greatly for supporting this channel for the first time tonight and being a part of making sure that we can keep doing this as a full-time job. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let me press reorganize on the spreadsheet. It's gotten out of whack, and then we'll move on to our next one. And this next one here is going to go to Mr. Lunchtime, who puts in a $10 donation, and that's $10 of the lunch money that could have gone to Mr. Lunchtime's lunch money fund. So thank you very much for donating that to the channel and helping to keep us running. And he said, great work as always, guys, and toasty, my friend. Stay toasty, you understand?
And thank you so much for the support, Mr. Lunchtime, and thank you for saying that we're doing great work, and thank you for wanting us to stay toasty. We will try and stay as toasty as we can, and thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Mr. Lunchtime. A big thank you to you for being an old guard as well. That joke is like an old guard level joke at this point, because that was way early in the war. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Not Quantum Physics. Hey! I'm thankful that it's not quantum physics, because I don't quite understand that. But they put in a 14 Canadian, and thank you very much for the nice support right there, and the first ever super chat on the stream as well. And thank you very much. And also, I like the little flying pair thing, flying to #1. I like that. And thank you very much for also supporting the channel first time. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, Not Quantum Physics, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible, help it to keep on rolling. And I gotta thank you for supporting this channel for the first time ever. If it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again for enjoying this channel and supporting it, so that way we can keep this thing on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one right here goes to CK Bold, who puts in a $5 donation and says, take a live chat question. And we shall, CK Bold. They're putting in the regular, by the way. And thank you very much for that support. And this live chat question is going to go to Chris, who says, how many amphibious vehicles do Russia and Ukraine have?
If we're talking about APCs, they have thousands of them, because the BMP-1 and the BMP-2, and I believe the BMP-3 are all amphibious. So technically they have thousands of amphibious vehicles. And so I hope that answers that live chat fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, CK Bold. And with that, we are on to the next one. And by the way, Matthew, the first part is Dobry din, meaning good day.
All right, so this one right here goes to Caviar, who puts in a $5 donation and says, Dobre di. He said, Dobre di. And he said, Enforcer, how much combined arms 8 being used in this liberation of Kursk? And have we any Bayraktar, Crabs, and Storm missiles?
From what we know, there probably are Crabs. I would say Storm Shadow missiles, unlikely. I would also say Bayraktars, a little unlikely as well, given the conditions of the airspace at the moment. But there is a lot of combined arms action going on. A decent amount of air, artillery support, and also armor support backing up the infantry. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Samuel Penrod, who puts in a $5 donation. Hey! And thank you very much, Samuel, as well. He said, any new news from Moldova? And also, I understand that Russia has troops along the border with Ukraine there in Moldova.
That is true, Samuel. They actually have about 3,000 troops inside of Transnistria. So far, we don't have any Moldovan news to speak of, and those troops have been there since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of the war. It's largely a non-event, from what we can tell, most of the time, and so there isn't really a lot of news coming out of there at the moment. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Grape Juice 3476, who put in a $5 donation. And also, while we're at it, huge shout out to Darren Quinn for putting in a 4, along with Michelle Esquera, who put in a 3, and then Andrew G, who put in a 3 as well. Huge shout out to Darren, Michelle, Andrew, and Grape Juice for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to give a huge thanks to each and every one of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. All 4 of y'all are helping this channel to keep on being possible, and I got to thank each and every one of y'all. While y'all didn't throw any comments, the support means a lot and helps us to be able to do this as our full-time job. And so a huge thanks to y'all once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Lawrence Todd, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Lawrence, for that support. He said, first super chat on my birthday. And also, happy birthday to Lawrence Todd, by the way. I hope you're having a good one. He said, I've been here a while and plan on staying. And that's good to hear. He said, another Reagan-era Army vet hanging out and getting my news.
And thank you so much for the support, Lawrence Todd, and thank you for being another veteran watching this channel. We have loads of veterans watching this channel. About 25 to 30% of our entire viewer base are veterans of the armed services, and I gotta say that's incredibly cool to know that you're another one, and also cool to know that you're from the Army. And of course, I gotta say happy birthday to you. I hope you had a happy birthday today. I hope this stream is a bit of a highlight of it, and thank you for saying that you plan on staying. We put a lot of work and effort into this thing, and we're glad to know that people come here and enjoy the channel enough, and the amazing community that's here as well, that they always plan on staying. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here is going to go to Paul DeSena, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Paul, for that support. Excuse me. And Paul says, a good show, and thanks, fellows.
And thank you so much for enjoying the show tonight, Paul DeSena, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much for giving some kind words as well, because it means a lot and helps this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to the real Gary Gensler, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Gary, for that support. He said, you got a hookup on a nice Russian tank.
And I do. I wish I did. I wish I could find a good Russian tank. Those things are actually like $50,000 in Czechoslovakia, well, in the Czech Republic. You can buy them and have them imported to America if you want to. But I don't want to, because why would I have the worst when I could have the best? I could just go get an Abrams or something like that when they finally get retired. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, and a very interesting statement indeed, the real Gary Gensler. And thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Mav the Bosun, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Mav, for that support and helping to keep our channel running as well. We appreciate that. And also, we had a 2 from Uncovered Cube, who said, here's to hoping that you both feel better in LSA. And thank you very much, Uncovered Cube, for that.
And thank you so much for hoping that we both feel better on Uncovered Cube. Hopefully that does happen sooner rather than later. And hopefully this is just a small little comeuppance for me, nothing long term. And so with that, thank you to the both of y'all, Mav the Bosun and Uncovered Cube, for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, I got to thank both of y'all, and we're going to be moving on into the live chat segment. I'm going to be trying to answer as many of them as I can. I'm going to be honest with y'all, this is not going to be an incredibly long stream tonight because I am actually not feeling better. I'm starting to feel a little bit worse and worse as time keeps passing by. So I want to get a little bit off air so that way I'm not trying to suffer live on air instead, because it's actually really rough when you're trying to talk the whole time because now my throat's burning, and so it's not that great. So with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we have one more super chat that just came in. This one is from Andrew Honeycutt, who put in a 5 and says, I heard that GER issued an arrest warrant for a Ukrainian man accusing him of sabotaging the pipeline, and he was living in Poland at the time and had a scuba certification. And that guy disappeared, by the way. He just disappeared into oblivion, that guy that they're looking for. So I don't think they'll ever solve that one.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. That is true information. It's just that we're not really covering that all too much because there's not really much to cover there. The guy disappeared pretty much without a trace, and now no one can find him. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Andrew Honeycutt, and helping this channel to keep on running once again. Huge thanks to you. And with that, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so moving on here to our live chat segment, we now have our Morse code decoders of the stream. But before we get to that real quick, I'm trying to see here. I put up a poll because Avari Mandabrata suggested it, so I was like, let me put it up. It said, served in the military, question mark. 64% said no, and 36% said yes. So a large portion of the audience listening right now, the 6,500 that are still here, did serve in the military, about 36%. And also, thank you all for your service. I know some people get angry about that, but I don't know any other way to say it, so thank you for your service, seriously speaking. And also, I don't know how many of those people are serving in the U.S. military or foreign militaries, but cool to see nonetheless. And Enforcer, do you have any thoughts?
I'd have to say that is really cool to know that almost a 40% of our channel is made up of veterans. That is incredibly cool, considering most of y'all served. It's pretty interesting to know that we can put on a show that's up to y'all standards. Lets me know that the haters don't know what they're talking about, because a lot of veterans are watching this show. And on top of that, you know, you don't make it into a book written by a former general of the army, and not only that, a director of the CIA, David Petraeus, by knowing nothing. You know, you got to know something at least to be able to make it to that point. And so with that, I hope that does address it well. Very interesting, though. And of course, I hope that all of y'all are very proud of y'all's service to whichever nation in the West it may be, whether it be America, the UK, France, Germany, wherever y'all may be from. Each and every one of y'all served an important role defending the Western world and pursuing our interests abroad. And so a huge thanks to all of y'all once again for that. Someone had to do it, and it was all of y'all. Interestingly enough, it was about 40% of y'all that are here right now. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, Jacob Polich said, does the Coast Guard count? Yes, the Coast Guard does count. The Coast Guard is, I think nowadays, technically, they're a part of the Department of Homeland Security, but generally, they're considered a part of the Department of Defense. So I would say, yes, the Coast Guard does count. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so now moving back here, we actually have one more super chat that just came in. This one is another $50 super chat from Andy L., the channel legend. And also, Andy says, it's the only way that YouTube will let me in. Andy, I don't know what's going on. I can see here that you are able to put the super chat in. And first of all, thank you very much for that massive support once again. That's very generous, and we appreciate it. I'm going to try to look on our end and see what's going on with that, because I don't see your name in the live chat, but yet I see your super chats coming in, which is weird as hell. That's a atypical YouTube glitch, and I wish they would get a grip on it, because you're not the only one. Like I said earlier, there's other people having this problem as well. So I'll go into our dashboard and see what I can do about that, if anything, and if not, I'll see if I can contact YouTube to see what the problem is as well, because that's ridiculous. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, thank you for the massive support again, Andy L. We're going to try and see if there's something we can do. I hate to say this, please don't be discouraged by this, but we may not be able to find a way to fix that, because that might be a YouTube kind of an issue, but hopefully we can find something to do to fix it. I am hoping and praying that we can. But still, huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, Matthew, get us on into those live chats, because I don't think I can be on air that much longer. So what do we got?
All right, so up first, we have the Morse code decipherers of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. They said the Morse code tonight says, Russian retreating across that bridge will cost them dearly, and I guess they will cross that bridge when they get there. In LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money. And I got to say, a really impressive thing. Wonderful to know y'all got the Morse code correct on the 95th day of the war. And a huge shout out to y'all. Y'all do that every single day. It's an absolute miracle. And I got to say, pretty cool stuff all together. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are now on to the fifth to last question of the night.
And also, just real quick, too, a message to Andy L. Try, like Miss Disa said, try signing out and signing back in and see if that fixes it as well, because that could be part of the problem. Or maybe the YouTube app needs an update or something like that as well. That could be causing the glitch, because I see you've disappeared from the live chat once again. But with that, we're moving on to our live chat question here, and this one goes to Bruce Lee. He said, is Belarus crying wolf to set the stage for a false flag operation, perhaps?
We actually are believing that at the moment. They're either trying to distract from what's going on inside of Russia and pull Ukrainian forces towards the Ukrainian border, possibly to defend it because of this false flag, or they're trying to create a false flag situation or a false flag attack so that way they can justify a direct involvement in the war as a belligerent and then draw Ukrainian forces away from Kursk in the southern regions and into northern Ukraine, where they'll end up being tied up against the Belarusian army instead. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the fourth to last question of the night.
And this one goes to DJ Marshall, who says, your opinion about the use of chemical weapons being used in the future by Russia.
I have a feeling that the chance is somewhat low. If I had to give a percentage, it's maybe around 10% or less. The usage of chemical weapons is looked at about as badly as biological and nuclear weapons, and for that reason, we would believe that if the Russians were going to use chemical weapons, they'd probably just go ahead and upgrade to the nuclear weapons instead, because why not at that point? Because you're pretty much crossing the red line either way, so go big or go home. That would be my general idea behind that mentality. So while the chances are very low, that's probably how it would go in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to O-Tubes, who says, apparently North Korea are now open to international tourists. And your thoughts, do you think they are up to something, or maybe they need some tourism monies? That's a terrible idea. Don't ever go travel to North Korea on a vacation. Like, I kind of think that kind of goes without being said out loud. Don't do that. I don't know why people go there. You're literally walking into enemy territory and asking something bad not to happen. So don't do that, folks.
Yeah, they're probably desperate for money. And North Korea isn't really tourist-oriented with the draconian laws that they have. A tourist messes up, and they get put in prison immediately in very harsh sentencing and very harsh rules. But beyond that, I would generally have to say it's probably because they're desperate for money. Now, just like Matthew said, I would not travel there. The Department of State tells people you should not travel to North Korea. That's not being put out for no reason. It's because you shouldn't. North Korea is not fun like they show on TikTok. There is no such thing as a real carnival or a fair in North Korea. Those people are paid actors. The whole reason that was built was to make it look like North Korea is doing good. It is all a lie. People are starving in North Korea. It's a hellhole. They hardly make any money every year. They don't even have edible food in the country for the most part for most of their people. It is something that I would 100% have to say, y'all should not and should never travel to North Korea, ever. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Portstan, who says, when are the F-16s going to take part in the war, seeing that everyone was excited waiting for them?
But they may be taking an active part in the war in a very quiet way at the moment, behind the lines. But as far as frontline combat roles, I'm not entirely sure. We actually expected that would happen as soon as they moved into Ukraine, and we haven't seen that yet. So at this point, we really don't know. And so with that, I hope that kind of addresses that the best I can, at least from what we would understand the situation to be at the moment. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is JR Does Stuff, who says, I read yesterday that all the command in the Kursk region is fled, and that this has been the major cause of all the POWs, and what are your thoughts?
I actually have not heard that, because from what we know, most of the command in the Kursk region is in the city of Kursk, and there are still forces moving in and using Kursk as a staging area at the moment. So while the commanders on the front line may have fled, which is entirely true, the actual campaign-wide commander, a general or something along those lines, those commanders have not fled their positions, and so the reinforcements that are coming in are actually being put into an integrated chain of command, or at least the dysfunctional model that the Russians work off of throughout the entirety of the war. So somewhat true, yes, for field commanders in some specific instances, but not the case for general staff grade officers in the area from what we know. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for sticking with us. It's been a really short stream tonight. It's only been 2 hours and 40 minutes long approximately, but we are still entirely honored and grateful to have had all of y'all here with us tonight, with 13,000 people here at the peak and about 90,000 people having watched so far. Actually, a lot of people were here tonight watching the stream. If y'all did enjoy, this stream is probably one of the shortest ones we've run recently. So if you like, comment, and subscribe. There's always more, pretty much every single day, but today. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. And of course, a huge shout out to Rag Doctor, who put in a 10 and said, if the FSB shows up, give me a call. I got your back. Oh, don't worry, Rag Doctor. They wouldn't show up. Hey, thank you so much for the support. And they would probably just mail us some poison or something like that. That's usually how they like to do it. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks, and thank you all for another great stream tonight, and hopefully we'll be feeling better tomorrow. I hope. But with that, thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you all for supporting the channel. And, of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and I'll probably see you all tomorrow on the Short War Summary midday tomorrow with enough news to cover. And, of course, if we're all feeling well, we'll be on the stream tomorrow night as well at 10 p.m. Eastern. So with that, thank you all once again, and good night.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Spring on me,